Night School.
Night School.
So today we're doing something a little bit different. Most of the episodes that we've done have been presented by either me or Travis. Going forward, most Night School episodes are probably going to be hosted by other people who have read a book. And if anybody has read a book and wants to be on the podcast, definitely let us know. Today, Brennen Hrebeniuk is here. He has a presentation on spiral dynamics, which I'm not familiar with.
Within the context of A Theory of Everything by Ken Wilber.
Cool. So what's it about?
So let's go forward with it. It's about everything, technically. So introduction. So first, before we introduce the book, I want to introduce myself. Brennen Hrebeniuk. This presentation and the visuals will have a lot of my personality incorporated with it through memes and stuff like that.
Cool.
But essentially, there's many ways to categorize a person or identify a person and understand a person, right? Some of the ways that you can understand me is through personality metrics, and that would be INTP, consume, play, blast, sleep, double feminine, which you can, if you wanted to, you can look that up. It's called objective personality theory, which is not objective.
So each of those things was like in reference to a specific person. I'm familiar with INTF, but those others are...
It's a very complicated expansion of the Myers-Briggs phenomenon.
Cool. Okay.
It's a very, very complicated and interconnected.
Okay.
You'd have to look up objective personality theory with Dave and Shannon if you want to get into that.
Nice.
Next up is my Enneagram tri-type. And again, these are subjective, and these are like kind of based on my ego and my own identity of myself, but also based off of what I think and have become introspective of what I kind of represent. The next up is Enneagram. My tri-type is 8W7, 3W2, 7W6, and you can look up all those meanings of what that means. So they all mean significant things in the broader scheme of understanding a bigger perspective, but also a small perspective in the long scheme of things of who I am. Because it doesn't talk about my life, it doesn't talk about my upbringing, it just talks about kind of how I function.
But this is all information about you if someone wanted a better context.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to look at the surface of me beyond just the physical, they'd be able to look at this, and this goes into more of my mind.
Cool. Okay.
And how I got to things, not necessarily what I'm thinking, but how I got there.
Sure.
In attitudinal psychology, these are my top 3 personality metrics, by the way. I mean, obviously there's the big 5, which I could go over that, but I forgot to incorporate it. But attitudinal psychology is focused more on the 16 personalities style of using different letters. So I'm a VLEF in that, and you'll have to look up what that means as well if you're interested.
Okay.
It's essentially a person that is highly interested in intellect.
Okay, cool.
And then I guess the next things is my background. My background is, I'm born April 11th, 2000. I'm 22 years old. Born in Kirkland, Washington, to Adam and Julie Hrebeniuk. Whole nother story on that. My family of origin, but I will not go that deep.
Okay.
That's for another time. I have been diagnosed with ADHD and a bunch of other stuff, along with it wasn't technically an official diagnosis of Asperger's, but I was diagnosed with complex tics, so which is a derivative of sensory processing disorder and basically autism or autism spectrum disorder, whatever you want to call it. High functioning Asperger's, essentially.
Okay.
Which brings a lot of things that I've learned over time. A lot of things related to socializing, a lot of things related to emotional development, a lot of things. Socialization and emotional development are 2 of the things that have been the biggest struggles for me to overcome. Whereas thinking and intuition were the things that wasn't as difficult for me growing up as I am an INTP. So essentially, I was brought up by my parents. My dad was a pastor. My mom was a dentist. Well, is. I'm saying past tense. They are. My mom was a dentist. My dad is still a pastor. And that comes with a unique experience to me.
Sure.
Being a PK, I would say the number one negative part about it is the feeling of people constantly holding you to a higher standard. of
That makes sense.
of basically what you must be like your father, you must be a saint, you must
Right.
do all these different things, and so it's been difficult all my life being held to that. Not that I've not been able to overcome that, but in the sense of that thing. But there's also positives of it. Like I get a lot of connections. I get a lot of business connections. I get a lot of people that I talk to,
For sure.
that I can connect with just because my father is a pastor of a 2,000 person church called C3, Columbia Community Church.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So the next up thing was this is just a couple of my more surface level accomplishments or interests: advanced language arts in school, advanced history, advanced business, philosophy. Especially in middle school, elementary and middle school, I was the top of my class at all times. High school, I started giving up because I didn't want to. It's not because I couldn't do it. It was because I didn't really believe in myself, and I kind of just was bored. I wanted to play video games all day.
Yeah.
So I didn't really apply myself in high school as much. I got B's and C's and stuff like that. But in middle school and elementary, I was an overachiever. And basically did everything. Philosophy, transpersonal psychology is more recent, but psychology was the beginning. Transpersonal psychology is a mix of a bunch of different things. Personality theory was a big one. That was at age 18. I started that, and then I'm still
Seems like still,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm still developing that.
Yeah.
These are all Asperger's related obsessions or intuitive leaps in my abilities to integrate all of this stuff together to better my life later on that I didn't even know I was doing.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't even attribute it myself. It's not me. It's God, right? It's God that was formulating all of this stuff before I even knew that it was existent.
I get you. Cool.
And so anyways, personality theory, computer hardware was a big one for me, which could lead to engineering later down the line, as I previously dismissed as boring. But computer hardware was a big one for me. I built 5 computers.
Nice.
I have a lot of knowledge on computer parts and hardware, and a little bit of a lot of software, a lot more software than I give myself credit for. I used to think I was just hardware guy, but then I was like, you'll notice these trends in my life where I think I'm just one thing, and that's the falsehood. That's literally the falsehood, and that's kind of the entire point of this book.
Yeah, no one's just one thing.
I'm not just one thing. I'm multiple. I'm everything. I'm all the different parts that make up me. Sure. But that's existential stuff. But anyways, I then went into entrepreneurship mindset, which I still am technically. I've always been that entrepreneurial. Math and money was always easy for me when I was growing up when it comes to understanding it and understanding sales and understanding all these different business tactics and stuff like that. I've become more... I've always been ethical with it, but I've learned more and more. But that point of things, I'm a solar consultant right now, and I hold myself to a high regard of ethics in that, because I don't want to mislead people or deceive people. Mm-hmm. And then in abstract visualization, that is a very big part of who I am. It's how I perceive the world, is through the abstract intuition and some of the logic combined with that, which kind of brings me a little bit down to reality. But one of the things that is hard for me is staying grounded on the empirical level of staying in the physical world or whatever. Because my mind always goes a little bit higher. It's in the clouds, if you want to call it that.
Gotcha.
I scored in the top 4 percentile when I was 18 on an abstract visualization test through this program called AIMS.
Okay.
So I scored very high on that, but I scored terrible in physical visualization. So basically, I sucked at geometrical configurations in my mind of visualizing things structural intelligence, but like architecture and stuff. But then I excelled at abstract visualization. Since then, I believe I've excelled and increased my points in both of those.
Cool.
Of course, obviously, I would max out more of the abstract visualization, and right now I'm working on the physical visualization right now.
Okay.
Which is becoming more and more clear to me. I'm seeing better images every single day. Then there's the memes. This is where this is high school for me. That was basically most of my high school. It's kind of where I goofed off and I kind of stopped taking my work seriously, my homework. I kind of went into that's where I basically formed the majority of my humor. It's mainly Gen Z humor, as I am a part of Gen Z.
So you were like making a bunch of memes?
I made a lot of memes. I indulged in memes literally to an obsessive degree. I was literally watching. I probably looked at about 500 memes a day or something like that when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So I consumed everything there is to know about memes, essentially.
Okay.
But obviously I was more targeted in the 2017, 2016, 2018 type things.
Okay.
That was where the majority of my humor actually developed, of being able to be more funny to people.
Yeah.
And you'll see some of that throughout this whole thing.
Cool.
And I'm speaking in a more deadpan or more muted way, just to make way for the the laughs later on.
Okay.
And so, anyways, the next thing was poetry for me, and these aren't in chronological order, by the way. Poetry / minor rap. That's a big thing for me. Part of how I express myself, part of how I understand my own emotions, as those are a little bit archaic to me. Emotions, I'm kind of stupid when it comes to emotions, but that's also a self-limiting belief. And so anyways, moving on, I have a bunch of other stuff I've researched obsessively that I didn't include on this list. Basically, my entire life is learning. That's essentially what it was. That's what it boils down to. Every single aspect of life I have basically delved into and tried to learn. I even learned in sports, which was not what I was comfortable with. I learned basically everything. I've dipped my feet into every subject basically known to man, and right now I'm focusing on how to create mastery. I'm a jack of all trades, but I want to be a master of all trades, essentially, eventually, if I have time for it.
That's a lofty goal.
Exactly.
Okay.
I know. But it's something that I wouldn't mind accomplishing eventually.
Yeah.
But then there is the so poetry, and then there is a bunch of other stuff, including spiral dynamics is the latest one. That's my latest obsession, essentially the idea of understanding consciousness and how we develop over time. It's all synchronized with everything else I've learned, of how we develop vertically rather than horizontally. All those other things I've been saying are mostly horizontal things of developing myself in a certain area, but vertical development is going beyond the area that you're in and basically seeing a new perspective.
Okay.
So that's basically, in a sense, what consciousness is and what's going to be described in this book.
Okay.
Integral theory, again, Ken Wilber, what he's about. And I need to be able to see this, sorry.
No, you're good.
This is going to play into when I'm explaining Ken Wilber. The background of Ken Wilber is going a little bit long, but wishes to have 6-packs but eats too much garbage. That's my little joke for myself. I have gotten into weightlifting, and I have built myself almost the perfect body, in my opinion, of what I thought was the best. But since then I've gained weight and not been in that perfect body state. Not in perfect's the wrong word, obviously. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah,
got him. But the next thing is weightlifting, swim, tennis, soccer, basketball. Those are all things that my dad encouraged me to do, and I ended up doing them, and were big passions of mine for a while. Since then, the sports have fizzled out after high school. Weightlifting replaced those, and I still do that to this day, but I've been slacking a little bit. That's why I'm a little bit more chunky. And then I guess, again, part of my life, video games, which are partly a metaphor for life. Video games are kind of a metaphor for simulation theory and the idea that everything is connected and stuff like that. So it kind of ties it all together. Is also my entertainment focus. Of course, I indulge in movies, TV, anything that everybody else does.
Sure.
The reason I made this presentation, the reason why I'm so passionate about it, I mean, there's thousands of reasons I could go on, but essentially to boil it down, it's to share what I have learned for all that will listen. And that is specifically for those who listen. There's people who listen to this and they'll hate what I say. But it's whatever you want to hear out of this, whatever you want to glean. I challenge you to take whatever I say critically. Don't take whatever I say as just pure truth. Critically analyze it for yourself and pick it apart in your own brain and discern what is right and what is not for you. And eventually you'll be able to find your way in life.
Yeah, always good advice.
Exactly. Never take any advice at the service. And then the other reason, why not?
Sure.
Why not? Why not? This is a big thing for me. This is a part of my development, and I hope that it can help other people as well.
Yeah, it's fun talking. It's fun sharing.
Exactly. I'll speed up on Ken Wilber because I don't know that much about him. I read up a little bit on his biography, not biology. I don't know his biology, other than the fact that he was a jacked boy. Right. You can tell that he is a nerd with a body. And so essentially... Well, he was. Yeah, he's not anymore. But he's also old, so it's
He
like
might be that
even
shred
Arnold
still.
Schwarzenegger. So, anyways, personality. He's believed to be either an INFJ or an INTJ based on most consensus. Of course, that's completely subjective, and he would have to be able to look within himself and confirm that. 5W6, 4W3, 9W1. Again, just personality metrics. You can look it up on your own time. AP, I didn't know. I couldn't figure that out. Couldn't see anything. Background, he was born January 31st, 1949. He's currently 73 years old and still alive. He was born in Oklahoma City. Supposedly his IQ is around 180, which is beyond Einstein's.
Wild.
And beyond most anybody in existence.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've measured, but you can't really say that because in the past, never mind. I'll go on. Normal upbringing. He had a surprisingly average upbringing. Like as 50s as you can get or whatever, where he was raised in Sunday school, taken to church. He had literally the most normal upbringing ever, but the only difference is that he was always the one philosophizing, and he was always the one that was basically excelling in all of his studies at a young age, and even through high school and college. And he went on to get his PhD. I believe it was in psychology, but I think he got multiple PhDs. He probably researched everything in existence. Not gonna lie, like me, I probably dipped his toes in many things, and has probably mastered many things. I didn't look too deep into what his actual accomplishments were in that field because I'm just scratching the surface of Ken Wilber.
For sure, yeah.
But he has PhD in many areas, focused on transpersonal psychology and philosophy. Again, what I'm interested in right now. Pretty much a cool, well-rounded guy that's hyper accomplished. He's contributed many, many things to multiple different areas of life. Six-pack abs, glasses, and a bald baby head.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool guy. Many unknowns because, again, I didn't do that much research on who he was, but more on the book of what he wrote. But basically, my consensus, he's a well-rounded guy that's hyper-intelligent and hyper-aware of multiple aspects of reality. So the reason he made theory of everything, again, this is my own understanding, is my own takeaway about it, to show the world the holistic art piece of creation and all that goes into being, to understand from a limited but high consciousness perspective.
Okay, cool.
You can dissect that if you want. You guys can look in the slides. I won't explain those. That is nonsense. Okay, so this is gonna get into my poetry. This poetry has a meaning and it connects to all of this.
Okay.
So I'll just say, I'll let you interpret it. I'll let you do what you want with this.
Okay.
This is called "We Want to Be," and I wrote this the other day. I want to be a monkey. I want to be a bear. I want to be a lion. I want to be a hare. I want to be a daddy. I want to be a mom. I want to be a Christian. I want to be a nun. I want to be a rock star. I want to feel I've won. I want to be a boxer. I want to throw a punch. I want to be policeman. I want to guard with gun. I want to fight a fire. I want to water fun. I want to be successful. I want to do the run. I want to craft. I want to make. We want to become. We want to give. We want to live. We want to love. We want what's whole. We want what's good. We want all that's above. We want the peace. We want unity. We want the Father's love. We unify existence, for existence is simply love.
Cool.
That is
nice.
That represents the physical body of my poems. That's connected to the physical world, which I can explain later if you want. But the next one is going to be. It's called. Let's see. It's called. Unifying God. Yeah, this represents spiral dynamics. This is consciousness or the ego, and this represents the heart and balancing the heart and the consciousness, not letting your ego get in front of you, yin yang, divine balance.
Okay.
Spiral dynamics. A whole bunch of different concepts that is involved in all this. So this one is called Unifying God, by Brennen, Hrebeniuk. You brought me into being. You sewed my arms and legs. And with the seed you sowed, your creation I was made. Laying on my belly, my body starts to shake. I move my arms and legs, they're like jelly, they don't break. You prop me up on my feet as I learn to take a step. You fill me with your power, and the path is made you set. I learn to love my family, for it's they that loved me. But a father's love is greater when it's the greatest entity. I perceive all of your wonder, the way I think will be. I imagine all the greatness and the friendships that I seek. I then get real rebellious. I say no, and then I pout. I push over my brother, and I blame him for the spout. I start to get real selfish, consuming more and more. And then I realize the truth. Community is the next door. I get real high and mighty. I follow lots of rules. I'm told I'm good by everyone, and that I am so cool. I do what I am told, and the rules always uphold. I continue judging everyone for not fitting the mold. I start to see absurdity in the rules that do unfold. I start to question people and the norms that they are scold. I form a new identity, much stronger than the first. I pick up all my tools and start digging into earth. Once was seen as profit, becomes so meaningless. The money I accrued, what need I have for this? I give it all away, hoping for happiness someday. But the money keeps on coming back in some backwards kind of way. I turn my eyes to heaven, what more is to be done? The Lord says you aren't done yet. It's the people they need one. I begin to start the projects to help all those in need. I invent structures and understandings to help people succeed. The people, they reject me. Why can't they understand? The Lord says you're not done yet, for you are just one man. He says, son, you need to unify. Get out of just one place. Seek understanding, surround the world with empathy and grace. The people don't want solutions. They just want to believe. But building a world of unity is all they really need. Be with them, learn with them, be all they need to be. It is then that we will unify, and you will come to me.
That's nice. So it's about like
about
you and God and about your perceived mission in life.
It's also about Jesus as well.
Okay.
It's about an anthropomorphized version of myself onto what I would empathize with, what would Jesus' upbringing would be, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It's kind of just a holistic understanding of all life.
That's cool.
Basically.
Okay.
And that one, it represents the emotions. So that one is more emotional.
Okay.
The other one was more focused on the physical and the tangible.
Right.
This one is more focused on the emotional and the human experience. So I'll show you the next two that will connect the spirit and the mind.
Okay.
At the end.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay, so now we go into chapter 1 of Spiral Dynamics. This is the actual book that we're reading now.
Great.
And again, this is as good of a summary that I can make. I'm improvising on a lot of this based on my notes.
That's cool. That's what I'm always doing.
Exactly. So Ken Wilber, Theory of Everything. So a theory of everything, let's begin. Theory of Everything by Ken Wilber. Essentially in chapter 1, he goes over the beginning of understanding everything, which is spiral dynamics is one model of that. Essentially, he goes into the integral theory of what all of reality is. Let's just start from where he starts. Mm-hmm. So first he talks about the boomers, which I'll expand more on the second chapter. Which is his generation. He's a boomer. He talks about how they had lots of ego, and they had lots of ego as well as other generations, but they were the first to develop what is called stage green. But I don't know the exactness on if they actually developed. They're the first ones to popularize it. And stage green can be associated kind of with hippies. That's kind of where the hippie movement came in the 70s. But what he goes on to describe, which I'll explain in more detail, is the unhealthiness of the hippies, even though they were perceiving the world through a supposedly more mature way in this model. He goes on to explain that there's a lot of pitfalls of it.
Okay.
In spiral dynamics, you have these. You have Clare Graves, who invented the groundworks for it back in the 70s. Clare Graves is the one who kind of facilitated it, and then I forgot the names of the other ones. I think it's somewhere in this image right here, of the people who actually integrated it into spiral dynamics as a model. So he laid the groundwork and they created it.
Okay. And should I understand at this point what spiral dynamics is, or is?
Yes.
I should? Okay. So
well, no, you're not. You're going to.
Okay.
Essentially,
cool,
yeah. It's leading up to it.
Okay.
So you have to explain these pre-stages and
Got it.
before you can truly understand the integral whole.
Okay.
So you go into the holons level. The third thing is holons, the big picture of holons. Essentially, in the book, he describes holons as a overlapping, like this image, overlapping circles encompassing something, kind of like the Earth's core, kind of like the idea of the Trinity in the biblical notion of the three God, spirit, and body all in one type of thing. There's a whole bunch of parallels that you can constantly draw from this concept of holons. Everything has holons, basically. Everything is overlapping. Everything integrates into itself. And the idea is that with a holon, you're not abandoning the previous ones, right? The Earth can't function without the core. The Earth can't function without the mantle. The Earth can't function without the crust.
And so would each of those layers be a holon?
Yeah.
Like the Earth is not a holon. Each of the layers is. Okay.
Each layer is a holon, and the Earth is a holon.
Oh, okay.
So it's an overlapping, four-dimensional way of being.
Okay. All right.
It goes into the fourth dimension and stuff like that, and maybe even the fifth dimension sometimes. That's the whole theoretical physics stuff. So then we go into spirals. I mean, that's, again, the same thing, holons. Similar idea with spirals, like DNA, basically. How DNA works, where it's constantly going in spirals and stuff, and you need your DNA makes up you, but it's little strands that make up other little strands.
Meaning like that each pair is like equivalent to the layers of the Earth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I forgot what it was, but there's a concept that I forgot to remember the name of, but essentially it's where you zoom in on something and it keeps on repeating the same pattern over and over again, which everything can. So if I looked at this wood and I zoomed in on the wood, physically, you would see a bunch of repeating patterns of what looks like and never-ending shelves, basically, in a weird abstract sense, obviously.
Okay. Not literally with a microscope.
Well, sometimes literally. They actually have proven it with literal things, but that's a whole another ballpark.
Okay.
That you have to look up pictures of that.
Okay.
And just use that wording, you'll find it with Google. But anyways, yeah. So that's just laying the groundwork for the beginning of understanding the spiral dynamics model. I'm going to basically explain the basics, and again, this is going to be complicated, but this is just the basics of all of it.
Okay.
This is just the very bare bones summaries of all of it. Don't take it as literal or this is exact. This is a big picture perspective on what spiral dynamics is, which is a big picture perspective in itself. So it's technically big picture squared.
Okay.
So anyways, you have spiral dynamics healthy and unhealthy breakdown. Basically, this is one way to understand things on a spectrum of healthy versus unhealthy, rather than good or bad necessarily. It's one way of seeing things. Again, take it with a grain of salt. So what we start with in spiral dynamics is this concept, and also before I start, spiral dynamics is an incorporation of sociology, history, psychology, and philosophy, all in one, and then there's even more aspects to it than that. But
Okay.
those are the main things that you want to study in order to fully understand spiral dynamics. So if you don't have a background in those, it's going to be harder to understand this model.
I mean, I maybe have more than the average person, but that's
Yeah.
not saying a ton.
Exactly. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is like each person is going to interpret this in a different way.
Okay,
You know
cool.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's good. It's good because each person, this shouldn't be seen as a hard set thing, right? This is a thing that everybody needs to take lightly with a grain of salt, but also kind of contemplate or critically analyze it.
Sure.
And maybe they might see some growth in multiple areas of their life if they do that. But
Cool.
again, that's up to them. So we go into stage beige, which is the first stage. Again, these are all sociologically backed. Supposedly, it's 100,000 years ago. I don't know if it's exact. These are just estimations
Okay.
of where they might have began in history. So this is the Neanderthals or whatever. This is what they call the Neanderthals or the caveman or Adam and Eve, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So stage beige is like
yeah.
a reference to a specific like a point in our consciousness development.
Beige is a color, and
Right.
you'll see all the colors. Beige is representative of Earth, aka the being, the human being, basically.
Okay.
It's basically a representation or a symbolism of ground and being part of the physical, empirical world. And by empirical, I mean the literal world.
Okay.
That you see, touch, feel, I mean, all the five senses.
Yeah.
The beige is pre-conventional, which I can explain later.
Okay.
Pre-rational, which I will also explain later. And it's, this is just my name for it. Obviously, you can call it many different things. I call it the physical being survivalist archetype. So essentially the ultimate form of survival. Neanderthal.
Okay.
Ape. It's basically the beginning of preserving our bodies.
Okay.
So there's a healthy side and an unhealthy side, and obviously that's way too oversimplified all the way, but this is just going to help everybody understand it more.
Yeah, totally.
Healthy side, I'm just going to list them off. I'm not going to explain them. Survival abilities, motor movement skills, body mastery, animal level senses, ability to communicate non-verbally, healthy digestion and body function, healthy food, water, sanitation, medicine consumption, etc., aka organic, non-GMO, cruelty-free, free of toxic chemicals.
Sure.
That's healthy. Healthy beige. Unhealthy beige is dependence, usually on a parent or society, lack of consciousness, extreme impulsivity, devoid of emotional, intellectual, or spiritual understanding, pre-verbal, unhealthy indulgence in anything, unhealthy food, water, sanitation, medicine, etc. So it's basically the physical body, unhealthy versus healthy in the literal sense of health.
Okay, so stage beige is a point in our evolutionary history.
That's exactly what it is.
And that is a list of
We all
good and
start
bad
at
things, or healthy and unhealthy things about being that type of person. when we were.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we all start here when we're a baby, right? We all start here, and we cultivate it over time. We integrate this part of us. And most people, by the end of their life, will be fully integrated and fully mastered in this concept of beige if they fully apply themselves. They will be able to fully research the healthy parts of life and be able to preserve themselves and extend their life expectancy, basically.
You're saying, what are you saying? That most people will learn a good familiarity with living in stage beige?
Yeah, so stage beige
that feels so distant to me.
Yeah, I know, because it's you're probably more intuitive or something like that, which is something that the beige is a struggle of most people. But you'll see in especially even third world countries, they'll have a lot more understanding of beige, essentially, where they are more grounded in the physical, tangible realities.
They're living beige.
Exactly, they're living beige. Homeless people live beige. Like babies live beige. These are examples, by the way.
So are you saying that you think that humanity is going to return to that?
We are it. We literally are in it right now. So, this is not the current stage of humanity, but everybody has this stage. If you can't, then you're going to be dead, basically.
Okay.
This is basically just life as it is, like physical life.
Okay, so that's contained within us.
Exactly.
Although it's not how
it's
we're
your
living
body.
right
It's your physical surroundings. It's how you treat everything. Your physicalness.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so essentially, the unhealthy side, or the examples: babies, homeless, Neanderthals, extreme disabled. Again, I'm not saying these are all the same or anything. These are just examples of ideas of beige. I'm not saying that homeless person's the Neanderthal or anything. That's all separate. And then extreme disabled, extreme addicts, survivalists, homesteaders, and farmers. So this is all incorporated. We all integrate this. If you are breathing right now, you are incorporating stage beige into your life.
Okay.
If you're alive,
Gotcha.
you're incorporating stage beige.
Yeah.
Because you are being alive, which is stage beige. It's being.
Right.
The next stage is purple, and this stage develops when we start to go away from the idea of everyone for themselves, and we go into the idea of we need a family, we need to procreate, we need to go into the world. Well, technically, beige includes sex and procreation, but this is the part where we go beyond just let's just mate for the sake of survival, but mate for the sake of bonding and relationships and healing and stuff like that. And so this goes into the idea of the family and the social construct, the local community. This goes into basically everything you think of when it comes to family and small groups, basically. And it also incorporates the idea of the supernatural. So basically the belief in spirits and devils and stuff like that, the belief in God, the belief in the devil. All these different conceptions start at stage purple, which is where we get our very supernatural understanding of the world. And a lot of people will skip over that and think that the supernatural is non-existent because they got rid of that part of themselves. When what we'll see is that you have to integrate the previous stages as to not get rid of them, but rather include them in your development.
Okay.
So you don't get rid of beige when you go into purple. You incorporate it.
Got it.
So my purple started about 50,000 years ago, according to their sociological understanding. Obviously, that's subjective.
Yeah.
Pre-conventional, pre-rational, again, just like beige. The shamanic family is what I use to describe this.
Shamanic family.
Yeah, that's the best word I can use to describe it. Healthy side is understanding of spiritual concepts, experiences, and entities. Family community focused, good at harmony, beginning of socialization, beginning of language, creates safety, associative capabilities, imagination, speech, social manners, sharing and more selfless, existential identity, beginning of emotional development, and trust of others. So as you saw before, the other one was the start of the physical body. Mm-hmm. This is the start of the emotional development, as in line with my poems.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of I'll show you the progression throughout the thing through those different things.
Cool.
And so then the unhealthy side of that is the incestuous family relationships. So whether that's mental, emotional, or physical. So it can be dependence on a family member. It can be actual incest, where they're having sex with each other and creating lots of genetic problems.
Yeah.
It can be any form of incestuousness can manifest in this low level when you're in the lower health of this development.
Got it.
So basically the idea is, when you look at these, is that you don't have to incorporate the unhealthy aspects of them. You can kind of get rid of those in a sense. To an extent.
Those should be things that
those should be things
of.
You're focusing on getting rid of, and the healthy things should be the ones that you're focusing on in life.
Yeah.
Again, that's subjective to you, so you have to make that own decision of what you want. So then you go into so after incestuous family relationships, us versus them mindset, closed-mindedness forms as a negative side of this, fearfulness, so fear of everything basically, gossip, closed off, stuck in past and elders, so it's how we always did things is the mantra, relying entirely on things that were done in the past. So basically, anytime you hear those phrases, those are technically purple phrases. And you can start to see all the phrases within these different things. You'll start to identify them if you truly study this model. And you'll start to see these different things popping up in reality, and you'll start to be able to actually psychoanalyze people and be able to see potentially where certain aspects of them are on the spectrum of consciousness.
Okay.
Obviously, it's not 100% it's not concrete stuff. It's this abstract stuff.
Right.
Examples of this is family, tribes, shamans, gangs, communities, groups, non-organized religion or beliefs, animism, and again, incest. These are just a few examples. And again, they're not all related 100% in the sense that they're not all the same. But those are all examples if you want to start to identify what stage purple looks like, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, these are just rough simplifications of from a human construct of mind.
Sure.
Our human minds are not capable of understanding the broadness of reality in the universe. We are only capable up to an extent. We're limited by the Creator's cap, which I'll explain later.
Okay.
So in stage red, we have stage red. This is the next development. This is supposedly 10,000 years ago. This is more modern, ancient history that we'll see here. Essentially, in stage red develops after when leadership is needed. So you have stage purple, where you have these families building up. Then in the family, dads usually, this is usually a paternal energy, is a masculine energy. You'll notice a masculine and feminine psychology, which you can look that up, will happen between each of the stages, and also individual versus collective. So this is the individual stage. Previous stage was collective. The previous stage before that was individual. And so individual correlates with the masculine side of things, pushing, which you can explain. You can look up that stuff. And then the feminine is the collective.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So anyways, red is the individualistic one again. This is where selfishness comes in. You have this idea that, oh, I'm going to control. This is an unhealthy idea. This is the unhealthy side. Obviously, there's healthy sides to this. You come in and you're like, I need to protect my family. That's the first thought. I need to protect my family, right? You develop this red leadership. I'm going to lead everybody. I'm going to make everybody fit my vision of where we should go, right? I'm going to do all these things. So, I mean, you could keep on expanding upon that. But essentially, the idea is I'm the leader. I'm domineering. I'm going to be the dominant one. I'm the warrior. And so that's why I call this the warrior/Olympian one. It's the beginning of leadership and the beginning of self-identity. This is where you begin to project or go outside of the collective, essentially, and start to have your own identity or your ego.
Okay.
So again, pre-conventional, pre-rational, just like the other three. You'll notice 3 of them are pre-conventional, 3 of them are conventional, and 3 of them are post-conventional.
Okay.
Anyways, moving on. Healthy side, beginning of self-identity, understanding power, defending against physical danger, fast, quick thinking, passionate, decisive, energetic, self-confidence, athletic, beginning of individual skills and training, bravery, beginning of leadership. And by athletic, I meant competitive. So competing. So the beige understands athleticism, but for the self, and then red says, I'm going to beat everybody else. I'm gonna race against everybody else. I'm going to win. Okay. That's red. Unhealthy side of red is arrogance, selfishness, violence, narcissism. That's where narcissism forms. And this is typical in toddlers and maybe sometimes teenagers. This is all crucial. Arrogance, selfishness, violence, narcissism, impulsive behavior, absolutist thinking. So you're either a friend or a foe. This either or black and white thinking starts. Oversimplification, impatience, blabbermouthing. So talking too much, which I struggle with a lot. Overly blunt, which I also struggle with a lot. And unreasonable. Focusing only on their own needs, bossing others around. And again, I already wrote narcissism. That is some negative manifestations of red. It's usually associated with evil. The negative parts are. I mean, technically all negative parts of all of these are associated with their human construct of evil.
It sounds like it's associated with like the will to dominate.
Exactly. It's kind of similar to one of the biggest aspects of what Satan represents, essentially, which is not necessarily to say that you should avoid this stage, because obviously that would limit your development. You have to go through this. You have to be confident. You have to go through all these different things. You have to integrate the healthy parts of them.
But there's danger. There's temptation.
Exactly. And that's the thing that you'll see is the trend is that these stages of individualism will delve into more what most people would oversimplify as evil stuff. But in reality, it is not necessarily evil stuff, but rather just indulgence or whatever. And you need to be able to control that indulgence. But it's also not unhealthy to explore, essentially. It's not unhealthy to be risky in the sense of controlled risk, of calculated risk, of not jumping off a cliff, but rather making a business investment. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
But anyways, examples of the red is warriors, criminals, mafia, pro athletes, specifically individualist pro athletes, so tennis.
The other ones.
Yeah, every other individualist, where I'm not going to list them all. Military, dictatorships, war, terrorism, martial arts, violent figures, prostitution, almost every villain known to man in every story. Special example of this was I was watching this video in Breaking Bad, where it's a good show. It shows red and orange thinking. That's the next thing, which I'll explain later. essentially Jesse Pinkman, who is in a red state of I want more, I'm selfish, I want all this stuff, all I want this drug money, is talking to stage orange and also stage red Saul Goodman, but he's mainly stage orange. He's this lawyer that is non-ethical, but he just works within the constraints of the law.
Right.
And he's basically talking, Saul Goodman is trying to convince him to launder his money and not just be very reckless with it, essentially, because Jesse Pinkman was essentially having all this drug money, and he was not properly concealing it from the government, who was then going to find out that he was getting massive amounts of money under the table, and then come after him in a tax evasion scheme, but then find out he's actually doing drugs, and then he would go into forever life in prison.
And it would mean problems for Saul. And
exactly, and it would mean problems for Saul. It's the whole picture.
Yeah.
So basically, that's Saul Goodman introducing problem solving and logical thinking.
Yeah.
To a non-logical, pre-rational thinker.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to blue. I'm sure we're probably going over on time right now because these are long concepts. But that's not bad necessarily, but it'll take a lot of time. Blue. Supposedly formed around 5,000 years ago. I'd imagine this is probably around the time of the Egyptians or something like that, or modern societies of civilizations or something like that. This is where modern civilization was kind of booming, is blue. This is the first stage where we see conventional. This is the conventional mindset, which I'll explain later.
Yeah.
This is also the beginning of the rational mindset. The organized, law-abiding patriot is what I would describe this as. This is where the beginning of where majority of America and the majority of the world is at is around blue. I would say there's a humongous percentage of people in this stage blue as a majority. And the majority of the world is between blue and orange right now. And then they're moving into green, which I'll explain later.
Okay.
Healthy side, cause and effect understanding. This whole thing, the whole idea of blue is you're essentially organizing society, you're creating laws, you're creating rules, you're creating the groundwork so that we go away from this red way of thinking of, let's just kill everybody that we can, let's just kill the people with power, that guy's weaker than me, I'll just go kill him. Blue steps in and says, hey. We can't have these bullies going around killing people. We got to establish some rules. We got to establish some order to stop these guys from killing these guys and to stop these guys from bullying these guys. So they set up rules where they punish the bullies for doing the things that they do. Then the bullies learn how to be a law-abiding citizen, and then they go into blue. So anyways, that's the whole thing. And that's not the whole thing. That's a very oversimplified version of it. Healthy side, cause and effect understanding morality, a feeling of guilt or remorse, justice system, personal and social responsibility, self-control and discipline, order, reliability, structure through hierarchy. This is the beginning of true hierarchy. Well, I guess technically red was, but that's another thing. Safety precautions, perseverance, loyalty, cohesion, respect, step-by-step instructions, laws, clear communication, smart goals, planning, future awareness, stoicism. So this is the first stage that actually introduces the idea that, maybe we should actually think ahead of our actions and not just impulsively act on whatever we're feeling.
Sure, yeah.
So this is the beginning of logic. So it goes body, emotion, logic, intellect, mind.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So consciousness starts with the body, then it goes to the emotions, then it goes to the mind or the intellect, and then we'll see the next.
Got it.
The next thing after that soon. So I'll go over the healthy side of. Wait, I already said that. I already did all of that stuff. Future awareness, and then stoicism is a great philosophy if you want to make yourself more healthy and blue, by the way. That's a popular concept right now that is being discussed by many people. If you want to look into stoicism, that's basically the concept that you don't let other people have complete control over your emotions.
Yeah, and check out our episode on meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which we covered. Yeah.
That's Marcus Aurelius is the one that created that. So if you want to look into Stoicism, look into Marcus Aurelius, you'll find all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just a reference. Unhealthy side, racism, classism, any form of isms when it comes to segregation, any segregating of anything, whether it's intellect, whether it's mind, anything. Anytime you are looking at someone and saying, you're less than me, or you don't belong to me, you don't belong with me in our group. It's us versus that mindset of like, basically, we don't want you here.
Yeah.
Hard judgment. So anytime you see someone judging something too hard, being overly snooty about things, being overly pompous about how their things are, that's very stage blue, negative side.
Yeah.
And again, all of these translate from red too. Extreme bureaucracy. You'll see this in the government. The government is majority blue. Extreme bureaucracy, where you set up all these rules that get really overwhelming, and they end up not helping things because there's a whole bunch of rules that get too crazy into the weeds of trying to structure society to the point where they end up just controlling and limiting society's growth. So you'll see that a lot in extreme bureaucracy. It creates a system of not being able to excel. That's what you'll see in tenets of communism and a bunch of other political ideologies, including even capitalism sometimes.
Right.
And so anyways, the next thing is blind obedience. Or no, next thing is rigid thinking. Rigid thinking, extreme conformity to the society, excessive perfectionism, blind obedience. So blind obedience to an authority figure, just doing whatever the authority says. Oh, the law says this, so we should do this. That we should do it because that guy said we should do it. That type of thing. Just blindly obeying a leader. So blue can actually fall prey to red. So that's another thing, is that red can end up manipulating blue.
Okay.
But blue usually fights back.
Yeah.
So essentially, blue will try to control red, and then red will try to control blue, and it's just a constant fight. But anyways, that's a whole nother expansion. Gotta stay on topic. Only do isn't what they are responsible for. So there is a bit of unhealthiness to that, but there's also some wisdom to that. There is too focused on the rules. Doesn't rebel against tyranny, basically. So they don't rebel against anything that is enslaving them. Turning subjective or universal advice and converting to turning subjective or universal advice and converting to the enforcing of rules in an authoritarian way. A lot of religions will fall prey to this, of essentially taking an advice or something like that. Not all religions necessarily, but a lot of religions and a lot of other political constructs and stuff like that will take advice literally, and then they won't critically analyze it for themselves, and then they'll just preach it as gospel, basically, of saying this is what it is and this is how we do it. And there's a lot more to it than that. Obviously, there's some truth to that. And then again, as we will find out, there's truth in every lie. There's lie in every truth, which is a whole meta-analysis of our reality, of morality and stuff like that. But anyways, collectivism, organized religion, strict rules, hierarchies, extreme loyalty, no questioning, formality, bureaucracy, government, corporate business, Captain America. These are some good examples of stage blue thinking. Patriotism as well, stage blue.
Okay.
Yeah, so stage blue. And obviously all of those can have healthy and unhealthy manifestations.
For sure.
Another, I mean, again, if you see a guy walking down the street in a formal attire, it might be an example of stage blue in him.
Sure.
If you're the more formal you dress, essentially, the more exemplary or symbolic you are of blue. Next up, we have orange, which is the fifth one. Orange is 2,500 years ago, supposedly, allegedly. It's still conventional. It's still rational. I call this one the Tony Stark, Elon Musk wannabe. That's what I call this one.
Okay.
It's essentially the tech giants. It's essentially the entrepreneurs. It's essentially anything related to going beyond what working within the rules, but basically formulating something that achieves. It's the achiever, basically. It's the person that wants to become better. It's the person that wants to grow themselves, to self-develop. Again, it's the individualist stage. They're working on self-growth. They're working on how to become a better person, how to better themselves even for society or something like that. I mean, any form of growth essentially can be associated with this stage.
Like technological development?
Technological, social, emotional, physical, thinking, any stage of development or any concept can basically be applied to orange.
Okay.
Again, it's the entrepreneurial side of things where you realize that, if I can work for this business and I can work a 9 to 5, and I can just keep on working these hours, long hours, and work by the rules, or I can just create my own business and have my own system of doing things and create my own rules, essentially. That's essentially the orange way of thinking. Orange, again, is where you can go into a lot of hedonism, which I'll explain later. Healthy side, result-driven, explorative, strategic thinking, pragmatic problem solving, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, rational mastery. This is probably the epitome of conventional logic, essentially. Pragmatic problem solving is very scientific as well. Pragmatic problem solving, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, rational mastery, ambition, self-growth oriented, strategic planning, flexibility, efficiency, effectiveness, game-winning focus, image conscious, conscientiousness, self-help focused, material abundance, science mastery, engineering.
Okay.
Those are some healthy manifestations of it that can obviously turn unhealthy if overdone. Also, another thing to know is that all of these healthy manifestations can be turned unhealthy if overdone or underdone as well. So when they're not balanced.
Totally.
As with all things. Unhealthy side, selfish ambition, the exploitation of the environment. This is where you get into a lot of oil mining and stuff like that. You'll end up not caring about the environmental impact of your decisions.
Right.
Because you're more focused on the profit than the actual overall ecological effects.
Yeah.
And this is very common amongst most corporate businesses. I don't think I even went into the examples of blue. I'll go after that. After this, I'll explain the examples of blue. I forgot to say that.
I think you did.
Oh, maybe. I'll skip over it. It's fine. Avoiding overly focused on profit, strategic manipulation for selfish gain, overly busy, avoiding self-responsibility. Okay, they keep on blaming the external, right? Something happens to them, and they think, oh, this happened to me. And instead of actually thinking about, oh, maybe my actions ended up causing this to happen to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe something I did ended up causing a ripple effect in time and causing this to happen to me.
Sure.
But anyways, you go on to avoiding self-responsibility, overly busy, so not having enough work-life balance is where you find this unhealthy side, where you end up overexerting yourself. I've probably been guilty of this in this concept. I overexerted myself in this in the last week. Probably dedicated almost every hour of my day that I could, outside of sleeping, eating, and some other stuff. So I've probably dedicated at least a third of my day to learning this stuff.
Jeez.
Which is a little bit over the top, if you ask me.
Maybe.
And it's probably that unhealthy manifestation of overworking myself. Overly busy, workaholism, extreme materialism, so hedonism as well, indulging in any pleasure that you want. That's essentially the idea of overindulgence in the orange meme. Also, these are called memes, by the way. I'm not making that up. That's like, the meme means to be a social construct, essentially, of multiple ideas coming together.
Right. Richard,
the collective.
There is no God, Dawkins.
Yeah. Richard Dawkins
that was
created
his thing originally.
Yeah, exactly. Which is funny because memes are a collective hilarity.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's Gen Z for you. Which I am a part of. Extreme materialism, hedonism, jumping to conclusions too fast. This is, again, oversimplification. They end up logically understanding things, but then they end up jumping too fast. I've been in this a lot. I mean, I could probably be in this even now. Like, I'm jumping to conclusions even talking to you about all of this. We all do it.
Totally.
Skipping steps, fake persona with status seeking, lacks understanding of non-empirical concepts. So essentially anything outside of the physical world is hard for them to understand. Anything outside of the science, which measures the empirical world, is hard to understand. Anything outside of all that stuff is harder.
Yeah.
They will adopt most people that are in this stage might even reject this entire model. They might even reject all of this because they don't want to believe that anything outside of the physical, tangible reality is what exists. They can skip steps a lot. This is where you get a lot of step skipping. They will basically abuse intuition of logical intuition of basically skipping to the next step without fully realizing the integral vision. So this is where people can skip from orange to a different stage, like yellow or something like that. And they'll skip over green or something like that. Again, this can occur at any point, but this is more prevalent in the unhealthy orange. Fake persona with status seeking. So essentially, they're very status focused. So they'll do whatever they want, and whatever they can to make profit and to make money and to do the stuff at the detriment of their own ethics sometimes. And so they can become very ethically relative, essentially, of basically not having any set ethics and just doing whatever they want. Rick from Rick and Morty is probably a good example of this from a scientist perspective.
Yeah.
And he's actually probably a perfect example of this, but he's also a little bit of yellow, but he lacks the green. But anyways, lacks understanding of non-empirical concepts, hedonism, overindulgence. So basically anything involved with overindulgence can be associated with a lot of the negative side of orange. Obviously that can be applied to any of the other ones too. Any of the other previous memes. So again, you got to integrate all of these into each other. And orange is not bad. None of them are bad. There is unhealthy manifestations of them, but even you could say that's not bad because it's part of growth. You have to be able to understand. You have to be able to fail to succeed. That's a polarity, but I don't know if that's what people want to hear. Anyways, overindulgence examples of orange: entrepreneurs, capitalism, Greek philosophers, college, science, technology, engineering, the Renaissance, America, banks, fast food, oil mining, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man.
Yeah.
Ultimate billionaire playboy genius.
Right.
It's the ultimate understanding of where orange sees itself, essentially. It struggles with narcissism as well as the red ones, where it's essentially they struggle with this idea that my ego is who I am and nobody else can overtake me. So anyways, green, 200 years ago is what they say, which would be...
Is green the highest level?
Yeah, this is the highest level of the tier 1 system. And then there's tier 2, which contains 2 that we understand and 1 that we don't understand yet, or at least have not been able to quantify. Because it's always, I assume there's probably more to this than just the ones that we can quantify, obviously.
Maybe we can't even imagine.
Exactly. We can't imagine. We can't know what we don't know.
It's not in our visible color spectrum.
Exactly. You can't know what you don't know. And so essentially, green... 200 years ago, 1800s is probably where this formed, where essentially it's the beginning of understanding that we are all equals in the sense of that everybody should be treated with respect, everybody should be treated with love, everybody should be treated with kindness, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of their identities, regardless of anything related to them. You love everybody.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Exactly. This is stuff that Jesus taught as well, in Christianity as well, but I'm not going to go any more deeper on that. That's a whole can of worms. But anyways, these are another common thing, and again with the 70s, this is the most focused one that he talks about in the book is green. He talks about green the most in the book. This is post-conventional. So these are post-conventional, which I'll explain later. The other ones were conventional. The other ones before that was pre-conventional. This is post-conventional. It's also trans-rational. It's beyond logic. It's going past the logic and incorporating the intuition, the feelings, everything. It's starting to become unitive in its way of viewing reality. But it's not actually, because it still has the segregation mindset of even those who... Essentially, the bad part of the hippies is that they end up... ostracizing those that do not agree with them. So they end up saying, oh, if you don't agree with our ideology, you're still going to be, if you don't agree with love, then you're going to be exited. And they don't actually incorporate everyone. So essentially, their idea is that if you hate us, then we hate you, which is fair. I mean, it's understandable. It's understandable why you think that. But supposedly the growth beyond that is understanding that regardless of what people do to you, you turn the other cheek. Which is a hard concept. Very hard concept. Hippie wannabe lovemaking piecers. That's what I called them. AKA, and again, hippies a lot of the time were in a healthy manifestation of green, which he explains later.
You say healthy or unhealthy?
Unhealthy. So a lot of the hippie movement is actually a very underdeveloped way of forming green. They kind of skip the steps of orange, essentially, which I will basically explain
Okay.
later. And that's an example of skipping steps and not integrating the healthy parts of everything.
Okay. Yeah.
So then we go into the healthy side of green. This goes into emotional depth and exploration, experiencing deep love of self and others, generosity, the desire for growth in self and others, non-material selfless motivation, accepting of differences, seeking not to be judgmental, attention, care, and compassion for the entire people of Earth beyond city, country, or ethnicity, global-centric, and some would even say that it goes beyond our Earth.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of views on aliens and stuff come from.
Sure.
Openness in most areas, loving all, warm, empathetic, helpful, sacrificing, selfless, deeper relational bonds, tolerance of opposing views, personal growth, spirituality and introspection focused, higher level communications, process improvement, abstract perceptions and understandings. Intuition is strengthened in this stage, so this is a strong emphasis on emotion and intuition is here. Philosophy goes beyond the empirical, so it goes beyond just what we can see, touch, feel. You know what I mean? So it goes into the existentialism, post-rationalism, postmodernism, bunch of different other philosophies that go beyond the tangible reality into the existence of the metaphysical realm.
Okay.
And so the examples of this would be hippies, New Age. So anything New Age is considered this. I mean, some unitive concepts are New Age, but anyways, postmodernism, relativism, psychotherapy, psychedelics are also associated with this. So any weed, any LSD, anything that alters the mind essentially is found at this one. Not the hard drugs like cocaine and heroin and stuff. That's more orange. By the way, if you were to classify drugs,
Not the ups and downs, but
exactly,
the sideways.
exactly. So the focus of green is not to focus on the numbness of their emotions, but to expand their emotions, essentially, which is what most people believe that psychedelics and those type of things can create.
Yeah, it rings true to me.
But obviously take caution, not advising psychedelics. Yoga, green energy, yin yang energy. So basically balance. It's just the example of balance, balancing things, balancing act. Peace symbols, music festivals, university culture, anti-war. So this is where you start to see the
A lot
people.
of hippie stuff there. Yeah.
Basically, the hippie movement is an example of a lot of this, but again, they incorporate, I guess you could say that they incorporate both the bad and the good.
Sure.
But the bad tends to be seen the most because we often see the faults before we see the growth.
Right. And I would say the spotlight was probably shined on those things in terms of the media and stuff that we've
Exactly,
seen.
yeah. And then you have ideologies and dogmas to judge things based on how you think they are.
Yeah.
Which we all do.
Of course.
We all judge things. Even the Greens are judging. They're judging everybody that's below them and thinking, oh, you're stupid for not indulging in organic produce and
Maybe some
smoking
of them
weed.
Maybe some of them are pretty good at not judging.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's where the beginning of it is, but they can still, if they're unhealthy and they haven't integrated the previous parts of themselves,
it's a danger.
They can end up falling into human nature of judging and hurting people and stuff like that.
Of course.
They might not be violent, but they might be rude with their words.
Yeah.
This is probably a lot of parts of me where I am around right now because I've never been violent with people, but I can hurt people with my words, and that's the part of me that I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, sure.
With the humility of everything too. So anyways, you go into yellow, which is the next individualistic one. This is the beginning of tier 2. Of the system, whatever you want to, if you can call it. It's basically going beyond just fitting into one mold, one part of it, and it's being able to integrate all 6 of those ones. And it's the 7th one, so it's the 7th, it's the completion. So the yellow is basically going in and looking at...
And just to be clear, when you say the completion, you are not referring to that this is the end of it.
No,
You're saying that because of
it's
numerology.
the holistic. It's being able to understand that everything is connected and that you have to be able to have all parts in order for an engine to function, essentially.
Okay, cool.
And so essentially, this is post-conventional, trans-rational, And it's also integral. The green wasn't integral. It wasn't focused on the unitive aspects of incorporating everything.
Okay.
This incorporates all of the previous structures and understands the need for incorporation of all previous structures. They know that you can't get rid of beige, you can't get rid of purple, you can't get rid of red, you can't get rid of blue, you can't get rid of orange, you can't get rid of green. You have to integrate them all, and you have to be able to be healthy in all those and get rid of the unhealthy aspects, or at least contain the unhealthy and explore your Jungian view of the shadow, basically, which you can explore. Our bad parts of us, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Not to indulge in them, but to control them and to be able to allow them to be used as an
Directed
energy source.
usefully.
Yeah, used as an energy source rather than a imprisonment of you.
Sure.
I would call this one, again, these are just playful names, so it's not too much to take into consideration. I'm not some namer guy that is the best at naming things, but know-it-all but lovable inventor.
Okay.
A lot of this is where I'm beginning to understand in my intellect of where this yellow stuff is, but I'm not fully integral yet. I don't think that I'm fully holistic in the way that I view things because I haven't integrated all of the previous aspects of myself. So I'm trying to get into this. I'm trying to become better. I'm trying to grow as a person and conquer my traumas and stuff like that. But it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
Life is a process, and I'm only 22, so there's plenty of time.
Yeah.
Healthy side, systematic thinking, authenticity, develop skills for the greater whole of society and the universe without direct personal gain. A holistic view of every stage of development, free of judgment. Integrative structures and models conceptualized for help of mankind. Desire to come up with a truly integral and helpful step-by-step model for human evolution. Integration of all modes of being, including body, soul, mind, and emotion. Focused on both process. This is the first integration of true intuition in the soul, by the way. This is the fourth one. So you have the body, then you have the emotion, then you have the intellect, which is the rational, and then you go into the post-rational, which is the soul or the spirit.
Okay.
The spiritual side of you. And so essentially, anyways, back to where I was going. Desire to come up with a truly integral and helpful step-by-step model for human evolution. So Claire Graves could have been argued that he was in yellow. Anybody who creates a model that helps everybody could be a sign that they're in yellow.
Okay.
And very few people are. It's a very rare type to be in. It's usually our inventors of the world. It's usually our people that basically change the world as we know it with their inventions. And allow other people to use their inventions for good, but also bad. That's mankind. Desire to come up with a truly integral and helpful step-by-step model for human evolution. Integration of all modes of being, including, I already said this stuff, including body, soul, mind, and emotion. Focused on both process and results. So previous stages would focus on processes only, not necessarily just the results, and then the other one, orange, would focus only on the results, not the process. So blue would focus on the process, orange would focus on the results, but then yellow integrates both of those. So then we go on to understanding multiple value systems without judgment, understanding that small actions can have big results, understanding how to create personal freedom without harming anyone or anything. Thinks and acts from intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic motivation. So they no longer need society to tell them that they need to do something. They are motivated by themselves to do it.
Okay.
And they are motivated to help humanity, not harm it or go for their own profit. They're motivated to try to help humanity at all costs to develop. And they're not worried about money. They're worried about generosity, and they're worried about helping people. And you'll see that this all goes throughout my poems.
Okay.
If you reread them, you can see that. Things next. High-level critical thinking applies at this level. So you could argue that a lot of critical thinking might not even be very plausible at the previous levels. It's very difficult to critically think and basically criticize all of your beliefs and emotions and thinking and basically almost gaslight yourself to be able to understand and become more discerning of what is real. You know what I mean? That's a subjective interpretation, both from me and for you.
Okay.
And so, anyways, there's a whole bunch of complexity there that's hard for me to explain in a simplistic way.
Sure. Yeah.
But intuitively knows, or high-level critical thinking, curiosity, intuitively knows the most important pieces of every puzzle. Creative and innovative, the continuous flow of big ideas and ways of thinking. This is also big picture thinking, if you don't know that. Big picture thinking is where this forms. Seeing past just the small details, but seeing the entire whole, which is holistic thinking, basically. That's what big picture thinking is.
Okay.
But sometimes big picture ignores the details to a bad extent. Creative and innovative, the continuous flows of big ideas and the ways of thinking. Understands the most comprehensive and effective procedures to create complex strategies using previous knowledge. Connecting all the dots, patterns, synchronicities, understanding intuition along with logic and emotion. And it's you basically not just relying on your emotions, not just relying on your intellect, not just relying on your spirit, not just relying on your body, but relying on all four of those to communicate to you what you need to do through God's communication to you, essentially.
Okay.
Unhealthy side, overanalysis. So they can get stuck in analysis paralysis. They can stop doing action. So this is, again, when I've described there's knowledge, knowing something is a problem. There's understanding how to fix it, and you figure out how to fix it, but then there's actually fixing it, right? That's the third level. It's pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. But anyways, in this thing, a lot of yellows can get stuck in inaction, right? Like me, for instance. I get stuck in these things where I don't complete things. I start projects and I don't complete things a lot of the times because I want to move on to the next thing, right? Because I get bored.
Sure.
And a fully integral person won't do that. They won't move on to things just because they're bored. They'll fully complete something in due time. Now, the thing is that you can complete things at different times. Like I could start something now and then finish it when I'm 20 later on. When I'm 30 later on. Sorry. But anyways, that's a whole other thing. I keep on overcomplicating things. Non-pragmatic solutions or ideas. This is where you have too many ideas, too many NE ideas, which if anybody knows Jungian analytical psychology, they'll know that one. Non-pragmatic solutions or ideas. They're basically just spouting out a bunch of ideas that don't actually lead to practical application or that are hard to integrate into practical application. Not finishing projects to go on to the next one. Like I said, overcomplicating things and not taking action, what I'm doing all the time. I overanalyze sometimes. Hermits away from society to work on projects. Can be seen as cold or aloof when theorizing and creating grand models. So basically, this side, even though they have green in them, they might be unhealthy and kind of ostracize themselves from society in favor of creating these models, and then they'll later figure out, and this is what I've been figuring out because I've been in this state of being for a while, is that when you go and tinker in your shop inventing something that nobody asked for, they're just gonna look at you funny and be like, why did you just leave me for 10 years? Why did you just leave me for 10 hours? Why did you just leave me for 10 minutes? Why did you go to there and construct this thing that I didn't ask for? I'm not ready to experience this yet.
Yeah.
And that's what I do on a daily basis, honestly, and that's what I'm trying to work towards, and that's where the turquoise comes in. And that's the next level of basically being able to understand that you have to read the room, and you have to be able to read people, and you have to be able to understand their needs beyond what they tell you, right? Because people will lie to you about their needs. They'll lie to themselves about their needs. Their whole ego will tell them something completely different, but you have to be able to fully realize that this person needs something, not because I think they need something, but because they actually need something, and they've communicated that some way. So if they don't communicate that at all, if they don't communicate it through body language, through intellect, all these different things, then they probably aren't ready for whatever you have to say to them, and they're just going to get turned off by what you have to say to them.
For sure. Yeah.
Exactly. So then we go into examples of this again, which I've spoken of examples a lot of times. Inventors, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. if you read Maslow's hierarchy, and these very similar to spiral dynamics. Quantum mechanics, theoretical physics, chaos theory, time travel theory, Star Trek, Elon Musk, lifelong learning, Bloom's taxonomy, Leonardo da Vinci possibly. So these are all examples of yellow thinking in the world. And obviously, I would say the higher you go on the spectrum, the harder it is to come up with examples because there's fewer of them, and also we can misinterpret that. So some of these things on this list, I could be completely subjectively misinterpreting, as with anything.
Of course.
This whole thing I could be misinterpreting, but that's not what I believe. I believe that I'm understanding this.
Yeah.
So, or maybe I am. So then there's turquoise. So this is after we realize all that stuff that I explained of basically understanding that we have to meet people where they're at. We have to be able to speak their language. Turquoise understands that they need to speak the language of the previous memes wherever they're at, right? It's not just speaking to them from turquoise. It's not just speaking to them from yellow. It's not just speaking to them from green. It's speaking to them from their stage that they're at. If they're talking to a red person, they might talk in a red way. If they're talking to a blue person, they might talk, or maybe even this next level of what they're saying. So if they're talking to a red person, they might talk in a blue way.
You got to know the language.
Exactly. You got to know every language, basically, in the world of this. Oh, sorry. And so essentially... that's the goal of turquoise is fully integrating and uniting all of humanity beyond what is, and this was Jesus's teachings, basically, of unity, love, and being able to completely bring everybody. A lot of humans have misinterpreted his stuff to create dividing structures and stuff like that, when in reality that was never what it was intended for, at least I believe. That's a personal belief of mine. And I believe that Jesus came to unify the world and to be able to create this structure of what we need to be able to unify the world. So I call this is post-conventional, transrational, and again, integral. I call this the sage, basically. It's the idea of the sage, the all-knowing. I mean, that's a very narcissistic way of thinking of it, in the sense that to call somebody all-knowing when they aren't possibly God, you know what I mean? They're not God, so they're not all-knowing, they're not the sage, but it's an idea of that. And obviously God is above this stage, because he created it, right? We wouldn't be able to even know what the stage is unless, because when you program something, the only thing that the only growth that you can reach is the max level that the creator is at. The creator cannot create something that is stronger than itself.
Sure. Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So anyways, healthy side, understanding of the synergy of the entire universe, and maybe even multi-universes, if that's a thing. Surrender, acceptance, and joy. So basically at this stage, there's no fear. There's no fear of being. They're completely trusting God, basically, to guide their every path. They don't plan things out. They just simply be, and then things happen as they need them to. And essentially essentially they're manifesting a metaphorical bridge that's going in front of them, and they're basically just thinking, and all of a sudden a bridge is coming up in front of them, and God is putting that bridge in front of them, and they're just walking on the steps over the water. It's basically what Jesus did on the water.
Okay. Yeah.
And so surrender, acceptance, joy integrates instincts, intuition, and cognition. Integrates all of those things. Makes relational connections that are strong on the energetic level. Contemplative. Deeply contemplative, like literally going into meta reality, going beyond. They're seeing from the fifth dimension, essentially, which is all encompassing. We usually live in the third dimension and view the 2 dimension, but we end up being in the 5th dimension, which is a whole other thing of quantum mechanics. But anyways, they're contemplative. Feels inner peace regardless of a situation. So this is the ultimate healthy embodiment of turquoise, is being able to feel peace no matter what's happening to you. Somebody could literally be stabbing you and you can feel peace, essentially. Somebody could literally be slapping you. They could be doing all this stuff. And even though you could be reacting to those things in a healthy way, you could still be feeling peace the whole time, essentially. The idea is that no matter what happens, no matter how bad reality is, you're never going to blame God, because God's not the one who created that. He just allowed everything to be. And so you're not going to blame God for your downfalls. And so you become very peaceful, and you understand that God allows all this stuff for freedom, and that with freedom comes responsibility. So we have that.
Yeah.
They feel inner peace regardless of the situation. Holistic and collective connection to all consciousness. Essentially, there's an idea that we all have this collective consciousness, which is seen as sociology, that everybody or not everybody, the majority of people will be in a certain state. And one theory is that if you go outside of the consciousness, that you can, it's kind of like if you think of the collective consciousness as the universe or the God or whatever, constructing things. If you move beyond the consciousness or move behind it, there is a potential that you could stray far away from what the collective is. I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing or not. I don't know if it has morality involved in it, but essentially it's the idea that you're either behind, like you're either trying to catch up. You're either balanced in the alignment. You're dancing with God, which is not a walk or a sprint. It is a dance with reality. You're walking with God, and you're not walking with God. You're dancing with God, but if you end up running past God, then you're going to end up flying into space, basically, in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah.
You're going to end up falling into the black hole. You're going to end up falling into these patterns of being that are not healthy. You're going to end up going too far. So there is a grain of salt. There's some warning in this, right? You want to be careful about this stuff. I don't advise plunging headfirst into this stuff. I advise taking extreme caution with all of this, extreme critical analysis, because this can get dangerous, not in the sense that it's bad, but in the sense that the more power you have, the more dangerous you become, and therefore the more danger other people perceive you to be, and therefore the more evil will try to attack you. Supposedly. Either that or it's the opposite, where the evil tries to attack the weak, which is also true. But anyways, that's a whole other contemplation.
Sure.
So anyways, you go into the holistic and collective connection to all consciousness. Transpersonal spirituality integrates a global perspective, including all previous perspectives. Ultimate vision and understanding of the known universe. Again, these are all concepts. I don't even necessarily believe in all of them, right? I don't personally believe in everything that exists in all of this stuff, but I could believe in it. And I've definitely entertained all of these ideas. But it's up to the individual to decide what they believe, essentially.
Sure.
At the end of the day, and you get to decide what you believe. It's kind of like a write your own story, essentially. That's kind of what life is.
Yeah.
It's a video game.
Yeah.
In a way. Unhealthy side of turquoise. And again, there's probably more than this because it's such a high level and it's hard to understand. It's the most complex level that we can understand right now, or at least that I can understand. But and this is in sociology that they've capped this. Lack of action in favor of existential peace. So, that's the only really negative of it, is that you could become so at peace that you can see no need to move forward.
If everything's okay, why would I do anything?
Exactly. It's extreme comfort, and that's where where I'm saying that you can get lost.
Yeah.
You can get lost in this if you go too far and you don't have the proper thing. So my advice to everybody in this is to fully integrate all of the aspects of beige through green. Fully integrate all of that stuff, and you'll be prepared for yellow and turquoise, because it's not something that is necessarily, you can say that it's the ultimate state of being, technically, if you want to, but you don't want to go too far into this, or else you will get lost.
Sure.
You will get lost in the complexity. You will get lost in madness. You will get lost in contemplation and over-analysis. You will get lost in all of this stuff, and you got to be very careful with this stuff. Because if you try to get too close to God, the person dies. That's literally what happens. If you look directly at God, you will die. That's essentially the biblical notion of that. It's literally a thing in Scripture if you look it up.
The Scripture says if you look at God, you die?
If you look at God altogether, if you look at God as he truly is, you will die because he's too overwhelming, right?
Oh, okay. So our perception couldn't even understand him.
Can't
so
even
if we
understand
saw him, we'd
the
just be like,
beginnings
oh, that's
of who
so
he
good.
is.
My brain would blow up.
Exactly. You would implode. And in the Bible, there's multiple people that have tried to see God that imploded. There's multiple expressions. Multiple expressions of that, even in the Sodom and Gomorrah stuff like that. A bunch of other things. There's a whole bunch of things that I
Oh.
can't even remember the exact points, but I know
Interesting.
that there is. And then there's also the idea of what is it? I'm probably over explaining, and I'm probably going too deep into this.
What are we at?
Where are we at on time?
You're at an hour and a half.
We're at an hour and a half, Bucko. It's chapter 1.
Well, this is the most important part. This
Okay.
is like the entire thing, basically.
Nice.
That chapter 1 is basically, which is funny because the foundation of where you're at is kind of makes up the majority of what you need.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Building a good foundation. So examples of this, Jesus could be an example. I think he might have, if he is God, if he truly is God, which I believe he is, the Son of God or whatever. I believe that he would be higher than a turquoise level. It's just that we can only understand the extent of turquoise. People say coral, but they can't define it. So that's the next level, the collective coral, or the individualist coral. And I don't know what that means.
Right.
Some people define it as psychic. Some people define it as a different thing, different things. But
There could be 1,000 colors in between.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
If we looked at, we'd turn
exactly.
into pillars of salt.
Exactly. We can turn into pillars of salt if we even try to contemplate that stuff, not to scare, but to warn.
Yeah.
So anyways, Jesus, he's probably higher. That's just one possible example. Ken Wilber is probably an example of turquoise. He's kind of all-encompassing. He could be an example of yellow, though. I don't know if he's turquoise or yellow, but he is pretty much all-encompassing in the way that he sees things. And so he could be an example of turquoise.
He's at least capable of abstracting it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At least he's capable of understanding it, maybe not acting it out.
Yeah.
Same with me.
That's
I'm
probably likely.
capable of understanding it, but I might not be able to
Yeah.
act it out. Which you could argue that's the actual. You could argue that I'm not actually in turquoise, that if I'm just understanding it, but not acting it out, essentially.
Right.
So Ken Wilber, Carl Jung, Wim Hof, Alan Watts, Dalai Lama, supernatural abilities or perceptions. So any prophecy or divination or anything like that based on intuition and stuff like that. This is not witchcraft, by the way.
You're talking about like spiritual gifts.
Yeah,
or
spiritual
cities.
gifts, exactly. This is
Yeah.
not witchcraft. It's not using Satan's power to kill people or anything. This is just simply using your gifts that God gave you to better humanity.
Yeah.
And to help humanity. And bettering humanity is not killing humanity, by the way, Thanos. And so anyways, the holistic and collective connection, prophets, transpersonal psychology, quantum field theory, chakras, sages, mystics. Those are all concepts that are within that field of turquoise.
Gotcha.
Obviously, you don't have to believe any of it. You could believe whatever you want of it. It's all up to you of what you want to believe. You can say it's all garbage, or you can say it's all real. It's up to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you get to decide that stuff.
Yeah. And it could be absolutely true and valuable to some people and worthless to others.
Exactly. And it also depends on their stage of development as well.
Sure.
Okay. So that's all we need for spiral dynamics for now.
Okay.
I could explain thousands upon thousands of other things, but I'm not going to explain that because it's too long. I've consumed hours upon hours of this, by the way. More hours than we have. Okay. Q&A time.
No questions come to mind. I've been asking as
Yeah, that's
we've
kind of
been
the
going.
intention, is that part of the thing is that we integrate the questions into the discussion.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any questions or anything? Okay, perfect.
No. Cool.
So let's just move on. This is just a meme. I was going to make multiple different memes with this format. I borrow them. I didn't actually make that meme, but I borrowed it.
Okay.
But each Q&A thing is the same. I was going to make all of them different.
I forgive you.
Okay. my meme skills are lacking today. Anyways, chapter 2, boomer. This is a funny one. I like the imagery and stuff. You can look at that to help you understand some of it. Chapter 2, boomeritis. So let me look at my notes real quick. In chapter 2 of boomeritis, he basically expanded upon the notion of boomers having narcissism, essentially. And he noticed this trait, and I would argue it's amongst all generations. Every generation has narcissism to an extent, to a spectrum, right? If you were to put narcissism on a spectrum, everybody has narcissism at the beginning of their life.
Sure.
Not everyone has it at the end. But essentially he identified that boomers were narcissistic and that they were having a high degree, and it's partially because of their parents. It's nurture and nature. And anyways, he had basically understood that these boomers were becoming hippies, but then they were dictating and authoritating to everybody. This is what we're seeing in the modern world as well, in politics and stuff like that, of the left mainly. I mean, not to point fingers or anything, but a lot of leftist things right now are kind of in alignment with the boomer agenda of green, of basically you're evil if you don't follow my ideology type of thing, which is just all reminiscent of the previous ones. You can keep on integrating all of those overlapping holisms. So I mean, this is mainly goofiness, good boomers, bad boomers, big boomers, sad boomers, narcissism, skipping ahead, authoritarian utopianism, boomers consciousness equals crap. That's a joke, by the way. But essentially, those are kind of the big ideas that he's exploring. They put down others. The green put down others, and they put down anybody that's even under them in consciousness, under them in intellect, anything. Putting down people is the pitfall. Kids often outgrow narcissism. They start with narcissism in stage red usually. They go through this me, I want this, no. You know, I mean, all this stuff. Teenagers rebelling and stuff like that. Teenagers, I guess, could be a more representation of an unhealthy orange. I guess most teenagers, but that's a whole other thing. But anyways. One thing that delays ego development, according to Ken Wilber, is the presence of narcissism, or basically believing that you know everything, or basically believing that you are better than everyone, or that you don't need to take advice from anybody, or essentially like that. Yeah. Those types of concepts. And basically, as you develop, and if hopefully you don't keep this narcissism, but for the boomers, they often went into the green with narcissism, which most of the non-unitive ones do have narcissism. I would argue that yellow is the beginning of removing that completely, or whatever, of narcissism. Green is technically, but yeah, that's a whole bunch of worms. Sorry. Anyways, people often skip over things because of narcissism. That's the orange stuff and stuff like that. A lot of people even skip over orange, right? The hippies are talking about, oh, we can't have capitalism, we can't have all these nice things, and we can't have all these luxuries. It's sinful, or it's bad, or it's ugly, and we can't do this because it's overindulging and stuff like that, which some of that's true. But that's an unhealthy way to treat it, because you can't be telling people like that.
Right. And they don't have a good grasp of the positives of it.
You're going to get
weaknesses of
offended. They're going to get offended. They're going to regress, basically. Right. Because they're going to put up their ego, and they're going to say, no, I don't believe this. Right. That's what they're going to say. And basically...
And they're a little bit right, because they don't believe it, because you obviously don't understand what you're criticizing.
Well, they're right that they don't believe it. And that's a self-limiting belief as well.
Yeah.
That's just funny.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, they'll put up their hands and say, wait. No, I don't want to hear this. Which you have to respectfully say, okay, but a green person in this narcissistic way of the boomers, and again the millennials, and again the Gen Z, and all these different ones, will say, no, I'm going to force you to be good.
You're going to hear this truth.
You're going to hear this truth no matter what. Yeah. I'm going to whoop you with the truth. Yeah. And so you end up having this notion of essentially backhanding people with virtue signaling, and basically telling them that your beliefs are higher than theirs, and that you are better than them, and stuff like that.
Totally.
And this is just not good. It's not conducive for a healthy environment of unity.
Of course not.
It's not conducive for anything related to it. It's the ultimate existence of what the Bible calls sin, the missing the mark.
Right.
It's an archery term. Yeah. Missing the mark of what God has intended, which is unity. And so anyways, many boomers used ideas like love and harmony to mask their egocentric, narcissistic attitudes. So they use these things unhealthily, right? They understood that love was the thing, but then they would stand behind that as an egoic conception of basically, I am love, I am this thing, and they get too narcissistic in the love stuff. So then they end up thinking they're Jesus, or they think that they're basically too good for everyone else, and they end up basically trying to virtue signal to everybody that they're better, and that they are higher than thou, they're holier than thou, and that they are the ultimate conception of what morality and ethics looks like, and all these different things. There's a whole bunch of manifestations of that. But that, to the undeveloped mind, or even somebody, even like kids, especially if you talk like that to a kid, they're not going to be able to grow if you talk to them like that. You know what I mean? If you tell a kid that is literally learning to walk about metaphysics and about the physics of reality and how 10 times 10 is 100, they might not even understand that because they're a toddler. They're learning to walk. So it's the same with development as well. You can't expect an undeveloped maturity person to fully understand high-level concepts. It's like grades in school.
Yeah.
And so anyways, yeah. So that's a lot of stuff that I've been contemplating and meditating on.
Yeah.
Let's see. Immature green has a tendency to deny that the previous stages are significant. So immature green will literally look at themselves and be like, oh, I don't need orange. I don't need red. I don't need blue. Those are stupid. You guys are idiots. You know what I mean? You guys are, and same with the other stages. They do that too. They basically, anything before yellow is just a bunch of people pointing fingers at each other. Ooh.
Yeah.
A bunch of people pointing fingers at each other and blaming external. You're the problem. You're the problem. I'm definitely not the problem. I'm not contributing to this whole. You know what I mean? And so that's often where we get immature relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We get all these things. It translates to every aspect of our reality. So, yeah, that's the majority of it. Authoritarian utopianism forms in green. Essentially the idea that, if we just all work together, and this is a misconception of unity, essentially. So essentially the greens will have this forward-thinking view of yellow and turquoise of uniting humanity, and they don't understand what that means. They think it means uniting humanity in an authoritarian way. But in reality, the yellow and turquoise understands it as uniting in a non-judgmental, unity is not a bunch of people that agree. That's not what unity is. Unity is a bunch of people that love each other regardless of what they think.
Right.
That's essentially what it is. Unity is not a bunch of people in a church organization that all believe the same exact thing. It's not a bunch of people in politics that believe all the same thing. It's not all these things. It is beyond that. I think that pretty much sums up that chapter. In this meme, it says Gen Zs are snowflakes. Again, we're resuming where we were at. Gen Zs are snowflakes. Gen Z kids crying. And then he comes into the room to the boomer that's saying Gen Z kids are snowflakes, and he says, "Okay, boomer," and then
they fall apart.
And then Joe falls apart as he's so sad that he's called a boomer is who he is.
It hurts.
And then I put in quotation marks, sad grandpa noises. That's the little Gen Z humor for you guys. Okay, so next up. Q&A. Any questions or answers that you haven't already asked or answered?
I think not. Audience? No?
I think he's doing a good job of questioning it as you go.
Mm-hmm. I try to question everything I do. I question everything I do, and then people get mad at me. Okay. Chapter 3, an integral vision. So this chapter deals with, again, the idea of turquoise and the idea of holisticness, of incorporating everything. I've kind of explained a lot of this before, but I'll go into the specifics, how he talks about it, because before I was talking through my own understanding of it.
Yeah.
So I'll talk through his perspective, which is relatively the same, or we have a similar perspective, essentially. Hierarchies and ego development is what I categorize this section as. So in this section, he brings up the concept of hierarchies. A lot. Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. Hierarchies.
Sure.
He actually talks about it in a relatively healthy way, in my opinion.
Yeah. We reference him on just about every episode of this podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a lot of people say he's orange, but I think he might be yellow in the development. But I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to make any definitive statements. So the first part of this chapter goes into green being and the hierarchies, basically. So the way green views hierarchies. So he basically explains that green typically views, and especially unhealthy green, views hierarchies through patriarchies, basically. So green hates hierarchies, essentially. They tend to villainize hierarchies. They tend to say, oh, there's no point in hierarchies. They're just a bunch of separation. They don't think any higher about how hierarchies can be used for good.
Yeah.
They just think, oh, yeah, I hate hierarchies. They're what caused me to be in the socioeconomic position that I'm in. And they're still looking outward rather than inward. And so they're still at this point of thinking, oh, woe is me. The society hates me. We need to destroy the society. We need to reconstruct society. We need to redo all these different things. And so they get into these things of trying to control everything on society and hierarchies. And he's basically talking about how this is a destructive philosophy. This is a bad way of, or not a bad, an unhealthy way of going about things, because hierarchies aren't just bad. They can be used for bad, but they can also be used for good. And so he basically goes into other hierarchies of the different stages, which I can explain briefly because it is important. Essentially, he explains that the way, I'll just start with beige. The way this beige sees hierarchies is that they don't exist. They don't see any hierarchies. Well, theoretically, obviously. In turquoise, not turquoise, purple, they start to see hierarchies, but they don't actually acknowledge them. So they start to see the family structure of hierarchies in the sense of, oh, that's my dad, and we're all his children, basically. And then and this is, again, grossly oversimplified. The next level is red, which sees things in terms of power hierarchies. They see things in terms of who's the strongest and who's the weakest. How can I take advantage of that person? How can I do these different things? And that's mainly the hierarchies that green detests, which is understandable why they think that's terrible. But they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when they do that. They're throwing out hierarchies instead of just picking apart the hierarchies. And that's what yellow does, actually, which I'll get to. So then we go into blue, which is basically the traditional form of hierarchies, which is like the most hierarchical structure of all. Blue is the most attuned with hierarchies. They form massive corporate structures. They form massive government structures. They form these interconnected, very concrete, complete structures to try to balance power. Of course, these are not always efficient. These can become very ideological, very dogmatic, very bad, very unhealthy, because they can end up limiting people's potential. But hierarchies are hierarchies, and they still can be used for good. So then and again, they can be used as hierarchies for racism and classism and stuff like that. That's where blue domains can be used as hierarchies of trying to rank people, which is not a good thing in my opinion, to rank people based on their value or whatever, which is an orange construct.
Yeah.
But that you can do whatever you want with that. You can choose to do that, or you can choose not to.
Sure.
That is your choice. I'm not gonna say what you can and cannot do. I'm just saying what I think might be the case, which could be destructive. I don't know. But anyways, then it goes into orange, which is the hierarchies of achievement. So the orange goes into the hierarchies of basically who accomplishes the most, who has the most material wealth, who is the most scientifically gifted, who follows the rules of science and empirical reality the best, who is the playboy, who is the Tony Stark, who's basically the orange thinks the sees Tony Stark as the ultimate end all be all. The billionaire playboy genius. That's what orange wants to be usually. I mean, obviously that's a gross oversimplification and generalization. So yeah, that's basically orange. Then there's green, again, which I already explained, doesn't like hierarchies usually. But then we go into the yellow, which is like, oh, I was stupid for not thinking that hierarchies are important. And the yellow basically says, oh, I'm going to expand my horizons. I'm going to actually see how these hierarchies can be converted into something that's better for humanity. They go into the systems. They refine hierarchies. They go into the hierarchies and understand that they are important and that they are not evil inherently, but that they need improvement rather. This is something that even orange can't really understand all the way, which is the improvement side of things.
Yeah.
But it uses orange in their process. So yellow basically goes through and says, how are we going to make hierarchies that are more effective and efficient and not judgmental or separating? So this is where you get a lot of I don't know the exact examples, but basically I don't even know if they exist. Honestly, I don't even know if I can't think of a yellow hierarchy in my mind. But I mean, the internet is a yellow invention, and you could argue that code is yellow. Code, like coding things, like that could be a yellow hierarchy, a hierarchy of code. But that's a whole other abstraction.
Okay.
But anyways, you could divulge into a bunch of different things. I can keep on expanding and expanding, but that's not wouldn't be conducive to what we're trying to accomplish here.
Sure.
So then you go into turquoise, which is essentially. This one, again, is just a deeper understanding of the value of how we can turn hierarchies into good. Yellow might be more focused on the individual application of hierarchies, like basically what's going to pragmatically help everybody individually, whereas turquoise might end up going into hierarchies and basically saying, how are we going to create a system that is win-win-win for all, not just me, you, not just our family, not just the world, not just the universe, but for everything in all of existence. How are we going to better all of that? And it's a very expansive view that can get very complicated.
Of course.
And that's essentially the hierarchy of existence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we know it, obviously. And so that's where turquoise goes.
Okay.
And so I guess that's basically the majority of what this chapter is going over is hierarchies.
Okay.
Another thing that it explains is the idea of personality theory and stuff, which I've delved into a lot. He affirms the different personality theories as being crucial to the development of ourself and being able to understand our ego, because it gives us a lens to ourself of our ego. Understanding a bit about your personality type can be both limiting and liberating at the same time. And so essentially, he goes into the idea that beyond just one area of development, like let's just say, instead of saying I'm yellow or something like that, right? Instead of saying I am yellow, I could say my intellect is yellow. I could say the four different parts. I could say my body is yellow. My mind is yellow. My spirit is yellow. My what's the fourth one? Emotions are yellow. That's the one that that's the biggest struggle with, is the emotional part of like understanding the depth of. I mean, not that I'm not emotional, you know what I mean, but understanding how to regulate my emotions essentially and be able to healthfully deal with trauma and stuff like that.
Sure.
But anyways, beyond that. Sorry, I got caught up in stuff. I got caught up in my head. Holistic personalities. Essentially, the idea is that every stage of consciousness can be translated to every aspect of reality, even physical things. You could even put spiral dynamics abstractly on a dresser. I don't know exactly how, but you could. I mean, I guess this goes with that theory of zooming in on things and zooming out as well. And when you zoom out of the universe, you'll see constant recurring patterns and stuff like that.
Sure.
Is that word fractals?
Yeah, fractals. That's the word. I forgot it.
Good one.
You got it. Fractals is the concept, and that's kind of a holistic way of looking at things, but it's also something that exists practically in reality.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, holistic personalities and holistic being and consciousness can translate to any aspect of reality. Everything you see, these headphones could be part of something. Obviously, that's just a metaphor, but you could take it literally and literally apply it to anything in different parts of yourself, in different developments of yourself that make up the greater whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So multiple wholes making up another whole. That's the idea of holisms. Does that make sense?
Isn't it whole? Wouldn't that, like, so the word holistic means like making something whole?
Yeah, basically means incorporating all aspects of reality.
Gotcha.
So basically, instead of just picking one part of reality that you like thinking or emotions or spirituality or body, you're basically trying to incorporate all of them together to be able to form a whole.
Gotcha.
So basically, you're trying to integrate and be a fully balanced person.
Okay. But it's not spelled with a W.
No. Well,
Okay.
I think in British it's whole. I think it's.
Really?
I think in British it's H, and I think in. I could be wrong about that. I don't know about the spelling.
I don't mess with redcoats. I'm not into the redcoats.
Yeah, I think in British spelling it might be a HOL, but I think maybe in American English it might be with a WH. I've studied language as well. I've studied English and spelling and a bunch of other stuff.
Gotcha.
But I don't know about that.
HOL in American. I don't know about British.
Okay, so it might be British. It might be WH maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know about it. That's a detail.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, yeah. So basically, just everything translates to everything. That's the oversimplified, super kind of goofy explanation I can give.
Yeah.
Because I can't explain all of reality in one sentence.
Right.
I can try, but it won't come out the way it is. You know what I mean? It'll be our own human constraints of what we can understand it to be.
Right. Yeah. Theories of everything are rarely a couple
Exactly.
sentences.
That's what the whole entire book's about.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess one of the things that he went into, which actually I'll leave that for the next section because it plays. But
Okay.
I was going into the meme of scientist equals stupid or not having a brain. All these are just memes and satire and our sarcasm.
Okay.
The idea that a scientist won't have a brain is an irony.
Yeah.
But anyways, multidimensional quadrants is what I already explained. It's essentially the idea that all of reality can be pushed into quadrants, try things, sectors, everything can be condensed into these different number structures and these different things. And obviously that's a highly abstract concept that not everybody understands or agrees with. And I don't say that I agree with it necessarily. If I were to say that, I'd probably be lying to myself because for me to believe anything to be 100% true would be probably limiting myself, but at the same time, I also have beliefs that I do believe to be true, so my ego might be lying to me about that.
Sure.
It's a meta-analysis of my own self. So anyways, multidimensional, and I made the joke, multidimensional Rick and Morty, ? Essentially making a joke out of Rick and Morty being, and Rick is an idea of potentially yellow, but mostly orange, hedonism and nihilism of reality, of basically understanding everything but being depressed and being lonely and not having the fully integrated aspects because he skipped over a bunch of steps. And he basically skipped over, Rick is a great example of skipping over all the steps. He tries to become God, basically.
He would probably argue he's way past turquoise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's fully mature enough, because it's hard to say that because if he's not actually helping people in the sense of everybody except for himself, he's very selfish. If you see the show, he's very
I've seen every
narcissistic.
episode. Yeah.
He's very narcissistic. He's very much only focused on himself until in that one episode where he separates his toxic parts or whatever.
Right.
But anyways, that's the whole about the series. So this is just a meme. Which Rick are you today? Goes into the numbers of reality. This can also go into the Enneagram as well, I believe, of basically explaining how different people, it's basically different personalities.
You want to keep your face behind the mic.
Basically just different personalities of Rick or people.
Yeah.
And it says, and then I just quoted Wubba Lubba Dub Dub,
Nice.
which is his famous quote.
Yeah.
Okay. Q&A. Any questions or answers?
Don't think so. You guys got anything?
No.
Okay.
Chapter 4, Science and Religion. Okay. So this chapter, and I use the quotations, you're stupid, and then it's correction, you are, with the you apostrophe R-E or whatever. And that's the kind of example of what this whole thing is about. It's like the church calling science stupid and the science calling church stupid. When in reality, they're both in tandem with each other. They're both achieving the same. They're both trying to achieve similar goals of reality, understanding things, basically.
Yeah, totally.
You could argue that religion, actually, the monks were actually the first ones to become scientists. There's actually a history of that, of monks being the first scientists, of trying to understand things, not saying the church is better than science or anything, or the science is better than church, but simply the history of it. And it makes sense because it's in tandem with the idea that you would start in a church and then move into the science as well, not to reject the church when you move into the science. That was way over-explained. I'm sorry.
I'll get you though. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the ideas in this one, science and religion opposite, ? Are they opposite? Science and religion, are they at war with each other? Most people would argue yes. There's a lot of war that goes on between science, the rationals, and the pre-rationals, or the idea of a god and stuff like that in the supernatural world, which is funny because the scientists, if they were healthy, they would go through the previous stages of integrating the idea of God into them.
I believe Albert Einstein said he was trying to understand the mind of
Exactly.
God.
Albert Einstein was an example of yellow.
Yeah.
He was an example of yellow of basically coming up with the theory of relativity, which is a holistic concept. But it was used to create E equals mc squared, which then led to the nuclear fission. And I'm not going to diverge into that. That's too much history.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, subjective versus objective is another thing that he talked about. Is the idea of scientists will think that subjective things are invalid or not true, and that's that. I mean, technically, in reality, anything that's subjective, when you break it down in meta-analysis, it becomes objective because you believe it is, which is a complex concept that's hard to grasp. But essentially, the idea is that whatever you believe becomes reality.
I think there's some truth to it.
Yeah. I'm saying it as a truth. I'm just saying it as an idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, anyways, another thing is religion. Is it stupid? Science, is it stupid? Is it unnecessary? Are both stupid? Are they both unnecessary? These are all sarcastic responses, obviously.
Right.
And then I say neither. Are neither of them stupid? And that tends to be the case.
It's either both or neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that neither is the conclusion that Ken Wilber came to, though. And that's the more believed to be the more holistic way. But then, like, you know what I mean? That's a whole debate and stuff.
Yeah.
But he basically discusses the debate between church and science. And he basically explains how church and science often think that they're against each other, but in reality, they are basically trying to accomplish the same thing.
Right.
Science is trying to accomplish understanding of the universe, and so is church.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole bunch of goofiness that goes on in those things. And so this is there's probably more to explain, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Church is the anti-science. This is just a meme. Church is the anti-science. Christianity prevented scientific progress, and it's just basically listing all of the greatest contributors to science that all believed in a God and that all believed in religion.
Gotcha.
So basically, it's the idea that you can't say that somebody who's religious is stupid, and you can't say somebody who's scientific is immoral or unethical not in the sense that you can't judge that, but there's a whole bunch of other things. I'm not going to go farther than that. Yeah. And then my comment on that for the meme was, want to discuss God and quantum physics over a cup of unity? So essentially, that's just my meta-analysis meme. Nice. Q&A. Any questions or answers? I'm assuming probably no, but if you guys have any, please.
No. What's the list of scientists on that last page?
I didn't identify all of them.
Question, since I'm not mic'd.
Yeah, I didn't do all of them.
The question was, who are all of the people that are on the image there?
And it says it on there. You'll be able to see it in the visual.
Yeah.
And when they see it, I can't read those though because they're too far.
It's a lot of tough names, many of which I haven't heard of.
Yeah.
But they are all listed on the slide on the screen.
It's basically a bunch of philosophers that integrated Christianity or the belief in a God with science. Basically holism. In an oversimplified way. Chapter 4. Wait. What just happened? Oh, gosh,
you push it back.
Duplicate. Okay, I had a duplicate accidentally.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Okay, I'll delete that later. Okay, so chapter 5, the real way. It was like a deja vu moment where it was like, wait a minute. You keep on seeing reoccurring things, the patterns. Yeah. But that was obviously a manufactured pattern. Mm-hmm. Chapter 5, the real world. Politics, dogma, and ideology is what I basically synopsize this chapter in. And this chapter is all about basically, and again, these are all subjective interpretations of his work. So you got to be able to, you probably would be advised to go read it yourself and actually integrate what you think about this stuff and actually be able to discuss it and criticize it as well.
For sure.
So when I'm explaining these things, I'm not saying it as I'm the best or I'm the ultimate distributor of wisdom or something like that. I'm just simply analyzing something and giving my opinion on my analysis of it.
Right. You're doing a book report, and the book is out there if someone wants to read it and they're interested in
Exactly.
the concepts. Yeah.
Exactly. So right versus left wing is the first question. Is the first concept. In this chapter he delves into the real world of politics and stuff like that. The difference between left and right politics in America, and I mean it's different in different countries and stuff like that. He goes into the concepts of external versus internal awareness. I guess I'll explain it. And he basically synopsisizes and concludes that right-wing politics are usually focused on the internal, aka they are focused on, they see so for example, they see the problem of somebody doesn't have any money, right? A right-wing person might look at that person and say, "Oh, you need to pull up your bootstraps and just work.
Right.
You just need to work, and you just need to be the best you can be, and just work.
Right.
There's no other person that you can. There's no excuses. Basically, is their mantra.
Right.
And facts don't care about your feelings. Is another one of their mantra.
Yeah.
But anyways, left wing will then look at the same situation. Possibly, obviously, it's not definitive. It's just an example. Left wing might look at the situation and think, "Oh, that person doesn't have any money. How can we incorporate a system to try to give them money because it's the system that destroyed them?"
Right. Who took it from them?
Yeah, who took it from them?
Where is their money?
Exactly. They're looking at this external response. Who took this? Who stole? I need to be Robin Hood and steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Right.
That's the whole external thing. Externalizing, not taking responsibility for the internal, which
For sure.
the right wing still doesn't take full responsibility for the internal or the external. Neither of them do.
But it's more a right wing thing to be responsible.
The point is that neither of them are fully right. So the idea is that both of them are arguing over the same thing, which is funny because I've had so many debates in my life where I've thought that I was arguing a different point and the other person thought I was arguing a different point. But then it turns out at the end of the argument, we were arguing the same exact point.
Yeah, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyways, the next concept is sociocentric versus ethnocentric versus world-centric. So these are, again, sociocentric is basically the self, aka beige and individualistic ones of focusing just on your own development. Mm-hmm. Ethnocentric is just basically your country or your community that you're in.
Yeah.
And then world-centric is incorporating everything outside of your community. So everything outside of the community, just the whole world as a whole. Mm-hmm. That's basically just the basic understanding of those terms. It's just a way of categorizing. And you could also categorize it as sociocentric as seeing the problem within yourself. Ethnocentric is being able to look outward to your community and ask for advice on how to solve that problem. Mm-hmm. And then global is basically the idea of going out and actually making an impact in the world on that problem.
Okay.
The next concept is pre-conventional versus conventional versus post-conventional. This is essentially, again, I talked about this earlier that I would come back to this. Pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. Mm-hmm. Basically, again, these are very similar to the previous one. Pre-conventional is just the idea of the pre-normal things, pre-normality, what society considers normal. So technically, you could argue that beige at one point was a conventional term. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because at one point it was normal. So basically, conventional is orange and blue. So those are considered normal right now, and that.
So conventional in this context means like normal.
Yeah, the most popular opinion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
normal, like average.
Mm-hmm, average.
Okay.
The most popular opinion of the time.
Okay.
Conventional mindset, and then post-conventional is going beyond the collective.
Got it. Okay.
And basically having an idea that is outside of what's normal.
Yeah.
So basically going into green, yellow, turquoise would be post-conventional.
Okay.
So in today's context, obviously this is going to change over time, especially as people develop. The orange and blue might shift where orange and green is now conventional. You know what I mean? So it's going to keep on shifting over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just based off of what's popular, basically, and not what's not popular. So pre-rational, rational, and trans-rational. Again, same concept. Pre-rational is pre-logic. It's before the logic exists. Mm-hmm. It's just emotion, which is not a bad thing at all. You got to be able to integrate that into yourself. If you're always thinking about something, you'll just end up killing yourself because you'll overanalyze. Mm-hmm. Pre-rational, rational, and trans-rational. Rational, again, is more conventional. It's like the logic, rationality. Oh, that's a box, and that's what I see. Pre-conventional will look at the box and say, oh, that box is a mystical entity. You know what I mean? That box is a spirit. That box, you know what I mean? In an exaggerated sense. And then the post-conventional person will look at the box and basically say, well, I think that box is a dog. It's a very gross, it's a weird example.
Okay.
But essentially, the post-rational, or the post-rational, trans-rational, goes into the ideas of incorporating logic and intuition to be able to see beyond what is in front of them. So they supposedly are able to see beyond the physical, or I look at this mic and I'm seeing beyond it. And it can also be interpreted literally as you're looking past it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's basically the explanation of post-rational. Or trans-rational, sorry. I keep on using post-rational because it's post-conventional. Environmentalism versus industrialism. That is another thing that he kind of delved into. This is the idea of green versus orange, essentially where green is the environmentalism and orange is the industrialism, where the orange is like, well, I need profit, and the orange is partially right. You can't really function without a functioning economy. You can't possibly put solar panels that cost 10 times the cost of other things before you integrate and solidify the economy, right?
Yeah.
So you can't go completely green before you have the wealth built up. Otherwise, you will just end up failing because the green is very expensive. It's very expensive to live in a way. I mean, unless you get rid of everything, of course. That's the only way to live in green without money. But then, at that point, what will you be contributing to society if you don't have money to be able to accomplish your goals, which then help society and then progress you to turquoise?
I guess you're just not aiming for turquoise anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just stuck in green.
Yeah.
So, that's a big part. These are all big parts. I mean, all of it is big holes of the big hole, and it's not even done yet. This is just number 5. There's 6 and 7. So it's all cool. Is just a funny way of saying it's all okay. Everything is okay.
Yes,
not in the sense that I condone everything, but in the sense that everything is everything.
It is what
it's
it
the way
is.
it is. It is what it is. Yeah. So, and then this is a meme. It just says, it's just a traditional meme format where it says ideology everywhere. And ideology, while it's important, can also be destructive, just like anything else.
For sure.
I can use this hammer to make a beautiful construction for a homeless person, or I could use it to bludgeon someone.
For sure.
So the next, and then I said, so how about that Hitler guy, eh? I heard that he started painting when he was 9.
Okay.
Got him.
Got him.
Hitler joke. My grandpa was actually a Holocaust survivor, so that's part of the joke. It's dark humor.
I don't think it makes it funnier.
Yeah, no, it is funny. I think it's funny.
The 9 is funny.
Dark humor can be funny. That's another thing.
For sure.
It might be dark, but it's still funny. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily insensitive, but
totally.
I don't know. It could be insensitive. It could be bad, but I know that my family is deeply rooted in that.
Yeah.
Q&A. Do you guys have any questions or answers?
Don't think so. No.
Perfect. Chapter 6, Maxwell's economy. Again, this is kind of concluding everything. The 7th one is kind of just a summary of everything we'll go over. It's kind of just a conclusion. So this is the final building up of the actual storyline. On the 6th day, man was created. On the 7th day, it was all... Yeah, I mean... The quote that he opened up with is, in all intellectual debates, both sides tend to be correct in what they affirm and wrong in what they deny, which is by John Stuart Mill.
That's cool.
You can believe that or not believe that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it is a very good thing to think about, I would say. Essentially, the idea is that if you're debating somebody, you could be right, but they could also be right. And you could be wrong, but they could also be wrong.
Although that's saying more, I think maybe more than that. That
well, yeah.
Whatever you say is true, you're right about. But whatever you say is wrong, you're wrong about.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could also say that.
Yeah.
You could also say that. He also delves into the idea that truth, which I think that's in the conclusion. Truth. Never mind. I won't get too ahead of myself. Wrong and right, and chapter 6, Mass with the Cosmos. That's what the chapter's called, and I called it "We're All Wrong" since Rick Sanchez. That's just my joke about basically Rick thinking he knows everything and thinking that he can be better than everybody, and then you just basically humbling him and saying, "Hey, Rick, we're all wrong. We're all right. We're all wrong." So that was just my meta joke.
Gotcha.
So wrong and right. So he basically begs the question: is there wrong and right? And he basically says that yes, there is, but it's not as simple as we make it. Essentially, it's not just, oh yeah, that's bad, that's good. It's a lot more complicated than that. There's a whole bunch more to go into wrong and right that we have to be able to delve into. You can't just put somebody in jail without knowing all the facts. Essentially,
Yeah.
you can't put somebody in jail because they were accused of murder or because they were accused of something heinous. You can put them in jail after due trial, essentially, after fully understanding everything that went into it and doing that. But anyways, more experience, more holism is another concept he explained, that the more we experience in life, the more holistic we can become, because the more that we indulge in and the more that we learn and the more that we be, the more we will be. You know what I mean? So the more we will be able to experience and fully, and that's more of an intuitive way of thinking, essentially, of gathering all of the sensory data, all of the experiences, and translating it into the future, using that to be able to determine what's going to happen in the future. That's an instinctual thing that we have in all of us from the time of the cavemans, even.
Sure.
So another thing is creator be capping. It's a joke. It's capping and he's lying.
Yeah.
I'm not actually saying the creator is lying, but this is just a play on words.
Yeah.
Creator be capping, but essentially the concept, again, that I talked about before is that if we create something, it will never be more advanced than us. You know what I mean? It's pretty much impossible. I mean, obviously you could debate that.
I might.
You could easily debate that. But essentially the conclusion that he came to is that you can't, or maybe not even that he came to, but suggested as an opportunity, as an idea, is that basically, like I said, the idea that if you are a programmer and you're programming a video game, for instance, the characters in the video game will never be able to be better than you, essentially, and be overcome. And there's obviously philosophy that goes into exploring that concept of nihilism and predetermination and stuff like that. That can all be debated, and it can all be. But what is debate going to do in the end? It's just going to create conflict, and it's just going to create a bunch of disillusion. Obviously, there's positives of debate where you can end up learning something, but
I think maybe framing things as debate sometimes makes it competitive. And
exactly,
makes it
making
negative.
it a competition instead of a learning experience, essentially. And that's what I had to learn in high school. I was the debater in high school. I always debated everybody, and I still have some problems with that, where I end up debating people, and that's the ego. It's the ego manifesting in me, and basically
you're trying to win.
Exactly,
and that's not a good way to come at it.
So basically, the next step of what he was saying is putting down lower stages. Again, thinking that because you're at stage green or yellow or turquoise or something like that, or even orange or blue or any of the other stages that are above the other stages, above is not as we understand it, right? So it's not, you're not actually above them in the literal sense. You're above them in the sense of understanding, which doesn't mean that you're better than them.
Right.
Essentially, it just means that you're at a different stage of life. And so a lot of the times, again, with racism, with all these different segregating ways of thinking, we end up putting down the people, whether it's based on intellect, whether it's based on how we ostracize them based on their emotional abilities. We basically call them fat. We say you can't be here because you're fat or you're unhealthy physically. Whether we say that you're not spiritually developed, you don't have the faith that we need. All of those things are examples of the opposite of what I believe Jesus came to say, of basically love everyone regardless of where they're at, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like a child, right? So if you have a child, again, like I said before, you kneel down to where they are at and you talk to them in the way that they want to be talked to so that they can develop, because you've already developed past them. And then again, don't get narcissistic with that. You'll literally end up killing yourself. You'll end up getting, or even worse, you'll have everybody else kill you, essentially, if you become narcissistic with it. And you start to think, oh, I'm better. And you start to tell everybody you're better than everybody else. You'll start to think that you are God or something, and that you are the destroyer of worlds and Thanos and stuff like that. That's basically what Thanos went through, is that he was at a higher stage of understanding, but then he abused it and turned red, and was very unhealthy in a lot of his developments. And he basically tried to unify through the Infinity Stones he thought that the solution was to decimate half of the population.
Which is stupid. That's going to delay things.
Yeah,
it never makes sense.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything but just cause separation. That's the whole point. He's separating everybody from death and alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So isn't that funny? So, and then we go into higher levels, or we go into red, blue, and orange people. So this conception is that we're not just black and white or brown and, you know what I mean? We're not brown, black, yellow, you know what I mean? We're not based on our skin color. We're not just our skin color. We're not just our personality type. We're not just man. We're not just woman. We're not any of these just one things. We are all of it. We are colors. We are the colors that make up the universe, essentially. In the abstract, and a lot of people will think, oh, that's kooky. But in reality, that's kind of the abstract artist way of saying it.
Sure.
Red, blue, and orange people is a way of not even he, but he's quoting other people that say that maybe that's the best way to view people, is through stages rather than what they are on the surface, essentially. Looking in depthly at people and not just judging them by their surface level appearance.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. The next level the next thing is higher levels hurting lower levels. So again, I explained this earlier, where you have like the green, for instance, that tainting the idea of being a hippie to orange people and blue people and red people. The idea of higher stages, even if they're in healthy manifestations, well, maybe I guess it wouldn't be healthy if it was doing bad. But you know what I mean? Essentially creating this division and not talking to people in the way that they need to be spoken to with respect. And that's essentially what hurting levels. I mean, you can probably divulge a lot of what hurts the other lower levels to disrespecting them or telling them they're little, or trying to say that they're a lower development or something like that. Yeah. Which I all my life have struggled with. I literally did that. It's a very rude part of myself that I'm trying to let go of, because I think through this idea, and so does everybody. But I think through this idea of, oh, you're stupider than me. Oh, so you're bad. You know what I mean? That was how I thought in the past. But I've come to this realization that it doesn't matter who's stupid, who's smart. We're all smart in our own way. You know what I mean? Right. And we are all at the place that we need to be because we need to be there, because it's crucial to our development. And you have to be able to understand that, be able to respect the people that are at the lower levels. Totally. No matter what. Because disrespect, again, narcissism, saying you're better than everyone, it's just going to hurt everybody. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to help anybody. Yeah. And obviously they could hurt you. They could say bad things to you. They could be immature towards you. But if you're at the higher levels, you got to understand that you have to be mature. You have to be the bigger man. You have to be able to stand your ground as to turn the other cheek, as Jesus called it. Basically, not stooping to their level in the sense of unhealthy side, but stooping their level to show them the healthy side of their actions in a non-domineering, non-patronizing way. Essentially, of basically, rather than telling the kid they're stupid for dropping the soap, that's a weird way of saying it, dropping an object, that rather you would tell them that it's okay to drop objects, for instance, because that's a part of being a human. You mess up.
Can you provide an example of an object?
Oh gosh, I thought of a really offensive meme that would not go over with anybody, but I will not. Technology versus consciousness. This essentially is basically, he said that the way that people praise technology nowadays, which is usually a way to help the lower levels, which essentially technology is developed by an orange or a green or a yellow or or turquoise, and it's used, and it can be used by anybody of the lower levels for good or bad. And essentially the idea is that the way we value technology today and the way everybody is like, oh, this is cool technology, is the way that we should probably view consciousness, according to this guy, according to Ken Wilber. The idea that if we saw consciousness as this tool rather than through our ego of this is our stagnancy, or this is our we are forever this way, or something like that, we would maybe move beyond that, and the global consciousness would be raised to the point where everybody would move forward. But obviously that delves into idealism, and that delves into a bunch of different philosophies that may or may not be true.
Yeah,
You know
maybe
what I mean?
someday.
Yeah, maybe someday. This is kind of political, and kind of a political meme. I don't want to be partial. I'm non-partial in this whole thing, but when you beat the game and go back to level 1 area, and this Bill Gates, who has literally accomplished most of the things that most people would think is the epitome of accomplishment. He's a very good stage orange example, and maybe stage yellow. I'm not sure. Maybe stage green. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett pick up a shift at Dairy Queen is the title of the video, and essentially they are.
He made that one ice cream cone.
Yeah, he made one ice cream cone, and he's it's just a joke about basically mastering something and then going back and just going back to the lower levels and replaying it. And then I put in quotation marks. I don't even know if I should say this. This is kind of offensive.
Joe Biden jokes are definitely allowed. That's not that
Joe-
political. He's the president.
Joe Biden loves my ice cream. I saw him licking his lips earlier.
It's not very political.
I'm not that proud of that one, to be honest. That was probably not meant to be said. I probably screwed up there. Maybe we edit that out.
No.
Q&A. Any questions?
My question, since I don't have a microphone, is learning to help people a couple stages lower than you up an element of helping yourself move up too?
Yes, I would say
Is,
so.
is learning to help people come up a part of your development as well? Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah. So I would say more than likely, I mean, according to Ken Wilber, obviously, I'm not going to say that I know everything, obviously. But yes, I would probably agree that that is true, because if you were to help other people, you are inevitably helping yourself, because you are helping those people and you're growing yourself.
Yeah, the last level, the turquoise level, reminded me of like a bodhisattva, like the idea of someone who's reached enlightenment but is still here to like help other people.
Exactly. It's the idea of becoming fully embodied in that concept of enlightenment, of becoming the best you can be, that's humanly possible, not in the narcissistic sense, of course.
Yeah.
But the sense of becoming a more humble person, becoming a more unified person.
Yeah.
That you can basically help others, and that is arguably one of the biggest and most important parts of reality. But no part is more important than the other, according to this.
Sure. Okay.
It's a bigger whole. It's a whole of a bigger whole.
Yeah.
I have another question. So, I believe in the concept of unity consciousness, which is just to say that it's possible for a person to fully unify their mind with God's and see as God sees and be one with God. And I believe that Ken Wilber does believe in that concept as well. You mentioned that if you saw God, you would die. So I think that runs contrary to the idea that unity consciousness is approachable to the average person. That in your view, you're gonna have to summarize this, Raleigh.
It's a lot.
You got it. We talk about this shit all the time, so
Yeah.
you can easily summarize this. I would think that in your view, only Jesus can have unity consciousness, and everyone else is that's out of bounds for them. And then, if that's the case, I'm wondering, according to you, what is the goal of this whole path of development? What is the end? Because to me, unity consciousness is the end goal. I think that's the same for Wilber. In your view, as a Christian, what is the end goal, if not that?
What is the end goal of consciousness? Is it unity consciousness, like that concept?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, that's a very, 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 very interconnected and complex question that he just asked. That was just oversimplified.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So Travis is going to ask it on here.
Yeah.
So I believe in the concept of unity consciousness, that Jesus wanted to introduce us to the same oneness with the divine that he had, that we can perceive as God perceives and see and know and love as God does. That he was one with God, and that he told us that we could be too if we followed his path. But it sounds like, and I think Ken Wilber agrees that there's such thing as unity consciousness that's available to any person who walks the proper path. I'm curious if, in your view, Jesus is the only one who can have that status, then what, instead of unity consciousness, is the goal of working through the spiral dynamics?
It's a very good question. Very, very, very well thought out, very complicated, very nuanced, very philosophical.
Hard to summarize.
Hard to summarize. Every part of that. I'm not going to pretend like I know the exact answer, but I can come up with something that maybe might be able to explain it, or at least come to my opinion or maybe his opinion of what it is. I would say that essentially the idea of becoming like Jesus is a goal that God would honor and that God wants us to do, in my opinion. I think that he wants us to become like Jesus, not in the sense that we surpass Jesus, or not in the sense that we become greater than God or try to attack him or kill him. Yeah, not that we can do greater works than him or anything, not that we can... Yeah, exactly, in the New Testament, yeah. Not that...
I'm saying I'm kind of throwing a little jab because Jesus said, "You will do greater works than me."
Oh, I don't even remember that. I need to read the New Testament again. I've read it multiple times. I've read the entire Bible multiple times, but I need to reread it again. But
Especially the Jesus quotes, because of these crazy layered mysteries of wisdom.
yeah, so I would say in that extent, I mean, a lot of people would disagree with that, but I would say maybe that's true. I would say maybe. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to hold to anything. I'm not going to say, oh, it is or it isn't. I would say that that is very possible, that the ultimate extent of becoming like Jesus is to do that. I would wane lots of caution on this idea. Lots of caution, because to become like Jesus, you will experience the hell or the demons that follow Jesus that try to kill him. That's the Satan that goes into the desert and tries to tempt him, and that tries to tell him, oh, jump off that cliff, that your angels will catch you.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be the idea of Satan trying to initiate psychosis within a developed person.
Sure.
And I still believe, personally, I think that God is, or that Jesus is definitely the Son of God. I could be wrong about that, but that doesn't really matter in the broad scheme of things, because it's just a belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to die. I'm not going to go to hell because I believe that. I'm not going to be punished necessarily, as far as I know. Obviously, I could be wrong about that too.
A lot of people would say they believe that, but mean different things by that.
Yeah,
Because it is sort of a
exactly.
loose term.
There's a lot of stuff that I could talk about, but I'm not going to in regard to that topic, because it can offend a lot of people. Essentially,
Okay.
I don't want to be the offender or whatever. I've always been that. I've always been the one that kind of tries to point out the emperor has no clothes type of thing. So it's like the idea that the emperor is walking naked throughout the crowd, and nobody is acknowledging the fact that he's naked, when he's obviously logically naked,
Right.
and everybody's trying to pretend that he has clothes on.
No, you can stay seated. I can just do like this.
Okay.
That's so cute. So, if Jesus has a unique unity with the divine that other people can't attain, then I was wondering, I wanted to bounce the idea off you. If you think that, then I wonder if you would entertain the idea that humans are responsible for mastering themselves and exploring the extent of their own shadow, yet Jesus is responsible for mastering humanity itself and exploring the shadow of the entirety of humanity. Because that's what your warning reminded me. I was like, you
Yeah.
want to be Jesus? You sure?
Yeah, you really want to control all of reality, and you really want to be in charge of the entire world. You really want to have the entire world trying to crucify you on a cross. That's essentially the idea.
Yeah.
And so, so I would respond to that, probably, again, with the idea that I agree that you might be crucified if you try to do that, if you try to actualize fully and try to fully go through this whole thing. A lot of fully developed people were martyrs. There's a lot of people that were martyrs of this thing. And I don't know if that's the right thing or the bad or the not right thing. I don't know if we could judge it, but martyrs are martyrs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They die for their own cause that they believe in. I'm trying to remember the thing that I was going to respond to. You kind of multi-layered your question What was the beginning of your question?
I was wondering, since you believe that Jesus had a unique unity with the divine
Mm-hmm.
that we don't have access to,
Mm-hmm.
whether you'd entertain the idea that humans are responsible for mastering their own individual shadow.
Yes.
Jesus is responsible for mastering the shadow of all of humanity.
Yeah, I think that's a very, 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 very deep and good question that I would probably agree with to an extent. Personally, I would probably agree with the idea that we are in charge of mastering ourselves, and that maybe we aren't meant to master all of humanity, and that that's too big of a goal for us, or so, whatever. Like, it's too broad to the point where you would, again, probably see God and then die because you're overwhelmed. Or either you yourself would kill yourself through that, metaphorically speaking, or you would be killed by other people, metaphorically or realistically speaking.
Gotcha.
So I think that the idea of martyr. So that's where this stuff is really kind of scary, to be honest, sometimes, because.
Sure.
I mean, there's the idea that maybe the government could be listening in and try to crucify you for this. There's the idea that everybody could disagree with you and try to kill you, type of thing. Like, there's all these different things that could happen as a result of this. And at the end of the day, I think everything is just love. I mean, you just got to spread the love. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you spread the love of Jesus. At the beginning of your relationship with Jesus, you let him into your heart and your spirit. You let him be a light in you. It's a very dim light at first, but he's a very bright light. But you limit yourself on his light that he can show in you. And then over time, as you develop in your relationship with him, I believe that light grows stronger and stronger and stronger. But then that begs the question: is if the light bulb can be broken, if it's exploding inside of you, essentially. The idea that what if you develop that light too much to the point where it went overactive and it explodes because too much electricity is going into it. And that is the point that you have to be careful of. That's what I'm warning against, is the voltage. Is if you can think of everything as energy, if too much energy is going into something, it could explode. And it is a very deep, deep, deep warning that you need to heed if you want to survive and if you want to fully imagine all this stuff.
Here's why I want to respectfully disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think that the lights in us become dangerous when they are unbalanced archetypally. So if you go,
I agree.
I want all the knowledge, you die because you have starved yourself of 11 other things that you need in order to be a full human being. But it seems to me that there's some harmonizing element in the central of that dynamic that is the capital S self, that is the Christ, that you could never overdose on. Like, you can never have too much of the central element, but if you only take one aspect of that and you make it the central element by worshiping knowledge or worshiping romance or worshiping adventure or worshiping rebellion or worshiping magic or, any one of the archetypes, any one element, if you place that in the center, then it can burn you up. But if you put the center in the center, like, I don't think if you go so deeply into meditating on Christ that you are completely filled with the Holy Spirit that it will ever, like, break you. It seems to me like it will always be an integrating and healing force. And I feel like you're saying if you get too much of God in you, it could hurt you. It could burn you up. But that seems like something that could limit your relationship with God in a way that isn't necessary. So why do you think too much God can burn you up?
I think it can be kind of like the chicken before the egg situation in that situation. I definitely understand all that you are asking me, and I would possibly debate that and the idea that too much of God can't hurt you, because I would argue that, again, that anything over an excess and too much of a good thing can kill you, essentially, is what I'm saying. Not necessarily physically, right? So I'm not talking in terms of just physical. I'm talking in terms of everything. So if you were to overactively pursue God, right? You were just too obsessed with it, and you tried to become God, or even if it had good intent, I have a feeling, obviously it could just be motivated by fear or ego, right? And this is just all subjective stuff that is hard to understand. But I would say that if you were to go too far, too close, or even I guess you could argue that's too far away from God technically, because if you get too close to him and then you pass him, if you're sprinting towards him and then you run past him, then you're going past him. right? And then you're devoid of him, and then anything past that void is the void, and that has so much danger, and that has so many black holes that can become in there, and that has so many things that can suck you in and basically just completely consume who you are, not to eliminate you from existence, but to completely create a sense of hell, of constant suffering.
Like running past God could be like, let's say you spend 20 minutes in the morning in meditation and then 20 minutes in the evening in meditation. That's like a normal, healthy amount of contact with the divine. If you go, well, I'm going to meditate 12 hours a day, that could be like, well, the goal, you peaked at 35 minutes. Everything after that was just vanity, right? So that could be like, would that be an example of running past God? Is that the type of thing you're referring to?
Yes. I would say, again, I would just still hold to the idea that anything in excess is bad, essentially. Anything in excess can hurt you. Now, I mean, even pain, some pain is good. Like some hurt is good. So you need that stuff.
Right.
Not that you would inflict harm upon yourself, obviously. I mean, the Buddhists or something like that might have done that with the monks, where they try to break their own arms to re-heal stronger, which you could potentially do that. But
the Catholic priests do that. They say no pussy for my whole life.
Oh gosh, yeah, that is an example of that. That is definitely an example of that. Yeah, I mean I guess that's as in depth of an answer that I can give at this very moment.
I feel you, bro.
Yeah.
Were you deliberately making a light bulb element pun?
No.
Because a light bulb has an element at the center of it, which you kept calling the central element.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's all connected. It's all connected. Our minds connect to the greater, to God, essentially, especially with the more connected we are. So, I mean, that is an example. Obviously, it's a goofy example.
Yeah.
With the idea that he was able to connect his words without thinking about it. That is called potentially intuition or connection to the spirit
Maybe,
of God. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's an example of a fractal in a sense. I describe the universe and accidentally describe a light bulb because a light bulb committed the universe. A light bulb is made in the image of God. Like it's another.
Yeah.
And that's all in the that's all in poetry, right? That's what poetry is. It's a beautiful coalition of synchronicities, essentially, of constantly relating things to things, and constantly connecting different things. That's what rap and poetry and music is.
This is my last time. Because that's why when you hear a verse and it's on key and it's on beat and it's rhyme, you're like, oh my gosh, it's patterned on so many levels. It's properly musically patterned. It's properly topically patterned. It's properly rhythmically patterned. And then whatever the word for rhymingly, it's properly patterned in that way. You're like, this is so satisfying to hear. And then if there's 10 people playing in a band together and it all goes well together, that's just another level of pattern.
Oh yeah.
It's like, how many patterns have you lined up? And then do you properly make room for chaos within that pattern? Because if it's too strict, then it's not interesting. But
exactly. No, I would agree with that analysis and that revelation. I think another thing that I think I should probably talk about is I just lost it. Why did I just lose it? I lost my thought pattern. I lost my train of thought.
It happens.
It'll come to me.
Patterns of music,
Patterns of music.
and then making room for chaos within the music, because if it's too strict, then it's not interesting.
I mean, there's an example of essentially you got to make room for things, right? If you're always filled up to the brim, you're not going to be able to add more, right? If your cup is always filled, then you're not going to be able to add more. And is that a bad thing? I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. Your cup, but the thing that you can try to expand is the height of the cup, or the capacity of the cup, essentially.
Sure.
Oh,
We're at 3 hours?
I think so. I have one more final conclusion. I mean,
Okay.
Technically, we can skip past it, but essentially, it's all with the things that we've been talking about. Chapter 7, one taste. I taste everything. That's a joke. I taste everything. It's just a very low-level joke. Every truth is a lie is a concept that he went through in chapter 7. So essentially, the idea that there's lies within truths and truths within lies, and the idea of basically perfect balance of everything has some percentage of something. You're not going to have necessarily, according to him, obviously I don't know if I'd agree with this, but you're not necessarily going to have a 100% true thing. And again, I don't think I agree with that. Generosity was an idea that he went over with, essentially saying that maybe the end goal of all of humanity is just generosity, right? Just giving. And maybe that's true. I would argue it's probably a little more nuanced or complicated than that. Goes into the self and the things. Again, what he said earlier is that maybe selflessness is actually integrating the selfish in a good way, in the sense that you are giving something which then progresses yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
There's also the idea of he just concludes the idea of holism, which we already went over. Meditation, he talks about, which essentially is focusing on one thing, or focusing on one part of yourself or all parts of yourself. It's just focus, essentially, what is meditation.
Yeah.
And you can do different things during meditation to enhance your focus. But meditation is probably something that most people should look into. It's not some demonic thing where you're doing a bunch of stuff that will summon demons or something like that. Meditation can be anything. It can be focusing on one subject of school. It can be focusing on one scripture. It can be focusing on anything.
Yeah.
And basically expanding your horizons on what that thing is.
Yeah.
It's basically just focus and achievement in anything.
Yeah. Presence in something specific. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's theory versus action he talks about, which essentially is what I was talking about, where essentially you can know something, so you have knowledge, where you know something to be true, like you identify it, and then you go into understanding how to fix that thing or how to change that thing or whatever you're trying to do, and then you go into the action of doing it. And so essentially he goes into the fact that, or not the fact, but the idea that theory often does the first two, but it doesn't do the action. And so theory is not bad, but because it's part of a bigger whole, but if you don't incorporate action with theory, it won't become reality. Which is completely true, I would say.
Of course, definitely.
It's just logic, kind of.
Yeah.
Knowing, a lot of this is logic. That's the other thing, is that most of the things are numbers and logic is all this stuff. That's what we can understand. Obviously, that could just be my interpretation, but a lot of this is understanding how things are connected logically. That's basically what it is.
Okay.
Combining the logic with the intuition.
Gotcha.
And the emotion and the spirit.
Okay.
It's basically everything. And then also he goes over knowing, understanding, that's what I explained. Knowing, understanding, and doing. Loving everyone is a concept that he explores, essentially, again, going back to the conclusion that maybe the end goal of life is to just love everyone. And that everyone deserves love, and that we should do our best to be free of our ego that constrains us, and that we can basically spread the love of Jesus or God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, to the rest of the world, essentially.
That feels like a good ending and a plausible one.
Yeah, it's a good ending. I assume it's probably not the only ending, obviously. You could spread evil, you could do all these different things with it.
Sure.
But I would probably agree that that's probably the end goal is love of everybody, and that regardless of where they're at, what they do to you, what they say, what they are, you love them indefinitely.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the beauty of a agape love, essentially.
Nice.
That's agape love in Greek, which is the idea of a non-conditional, completely free of all conditions love. That is what God has for us, essentially.
Yeah.
And so God is literally the one who has that for us. And so we are to imitate God and try to be next to him, not above him, but next to him, and try to be like our Father, essentially.
Yeah. That's nice.
And then this last one's completely goofy opposite of what the thing I put. Kiss your homies goodnight. It's basically just a lighthearted way of saying love everyone in a way.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just your homies.
Sure.
This meme again, it's just a simple meme. It says, it's the Thanos meme where she says, "What did it cost you?" And he said, "Everything." And it's the Drake meme where he's like, I don't want that ending. And then he says half of the things, and
That's a
it
pretty good
goes
one.
it goes a smiling face, and he's like, because it's a meme about him taking out half of everything.
That's my favorite of the memes.
Mhm,
That's a good
mhm.
one.
It's the concluding meme, conclusion meme. And then he says, and then my joke is, now let me just go commit some mass genocide. Welcome to join me. And so yeah, I mean that's just a lighthearted approach to a monstrous being.
Yeah.
Again, Q&A. Any more concluding questions before I read the final poems to close this out?
Concluding comment about your motivation is it seems like, as knowing you for a couple of years, your passion for the love of Jesus and your hyper intellectual nature are trying to meet in the middle. So you've become interested in more and more holistic subjects because you're trying to understand everything intellectually so that you can love everything intuitively and spiritually. Do you feel like that's what you're doing as a person?
I think
Is
so.
that what you're up to?
I think it is.
You can't love shit that you don't understand. Right?
Exactly,
You can't be
exactly.
like, I don't know anything about that. I don't get it, but I love it.
Well,
Like,
and I
no.
think I'm also actually, and before I thought the emotions were devoid, but when I think about it, the passion is what actually drives me, which is the emotions, right? It's the idea that can't be interested in this stuff unless it fuels my passion. The part that I am concerned about myself in all this, and I mean, I'm trying to grow in humility. I'm trying to grow in non-partiality of basically being able to be outside of myself and looking at myself from an outside lens, is the idea that what if I'm going too far? What if I'm, it's a fear, obviously. What if I'm going too far in this? What if this is not what God has for me? What if this is too far and I'm going off the edge, right? Going into the void. And I guess that's the part of myself that I want to stay grounded in. And I think the part that will ground me is getting better at the empirical activities such as sports and physical stuff and stuff like that, and being more relatable to people, basically, of being able to be fully engaged with the activities and loves and interests of other people outside of my own, right? I used to judge other people's interests and hobbies and loves. I'd be like, oh, that's stupid, makeup, that's dumb. You know what I mean? All these different things, all these childish conceptions. But I've realized that everybody has their own expressions, right? And everybody has their own things that make them happy, and that is beautiful. That is the beautiful aspect of life, is that everybody has their thing that they love and that they are passionate about. And I think rather than being jealous of people, or rather than hating on people for not doing what you want to do, it would be best to just show them love and respect.
Everyone in this room has spent the last couple of years trying to learn to be less cynical and more open-hearted.
That's what I've been working on too. I think my most immature parts of me, if I were to introspect, would be my emotional side and my body side. I think my spirit and my intellect are pretty high up there in terms of development, which I don't know if that's a narcissistic thing to say, but it's not meant to be. I just want to identify
You're
kind of like
referring to how developed they are relative.
yeah,
to
relative,
the other levels.
as like a scientific perspective on it or whatever, of like trying to analyze it essentially, which is kind of flawed because I'm trying to objectively analyze something that's subjective essentially. But at the same time, it's all connected. But anyways, back to what I was saying. I think that emotion and physicality is what I need to grow more in. Not to say that I'm bad at them, not to say that I'm terrible at them or any worse than any other person, but rather that I could integrate and cultivate that love of sports that most guys have. You know what I mean? Cultivate that love of martial arts and that ability to defend myself and stuff like that. Cultivate all of those aspects of emotion and love and beauty and all these different things.
There's also, besides sports, because I don't feel like that's everybody.
Right.
There's also somatic practices that you could use to.
Like psychosomatic?
No, somatic, as in there's a psycho element to it too, but a somatic practice is like, for example, sitting down in a chair, putting your feet flat on the floor, and then just breathing in and out, and then bringing your attention to your breath, and then inviting your body to bring to your attention any emotions that it's feeling that you're not consciously aware of. a somatic practice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it's
I do that all the time. I literally have been doing that for the last week or so. I've been meditating in the shower. Actually, that's where I do it. I meditate in the shower, and I actually pray to God to balance me in all areas, and I go through specifics of areas of my life and stuff like that. And I've been doing that lately, and I'm more connected than I've ever been with God, and I feel more at peace than I ever have. I'm getting better at handling conflicts with everybody. I am getting better at not causing conflicts. I'm getting better at all these different things. And a lot of people have been actually accusing me of this just all being mania, right? This all just being a bipolar disorder or something like that, of me thinking, they're thinking that I'm like just going off the deep end and that I'm going to be depressed tomorrow. But I don't think that's what this is. I think that this is a forever love of the Lord, and a constant peace. Now, I mean, I remember.
There is, of course, there is something about it that is manic. Like when
the obsession part. The obsession part.
The obsession part, and the fact that like when you go off on an intellectual rabbit trail and you are learning only for the sake of your own obsessive curiosity, and you have no intention of using what you're learning to help anyone but yourself, that is a manic rabbit trail.
Yeah.
But you can go down a manic rabbit trail, and you better finish the rabbit trail, because if you don't get what the hell you're looking for, you're going to be stuck there. So it's like, okay, go down your manic rabbit trail, and it'll loop back, and you come back with something. Like, if you go on an adventure to find knowledge for yourself, then you might end up out there chasing your own tail in circles. But if you go on an obsessive intellectual adventure so that you can find something that you can use to make the world a better place, or you have some archetype in your mind of, man, I need something that I could use to empower single moms. I need something that I could use to help young men who didn't have fathers mature. Or, you had somebody in your head that you're like, I have to. Or, in my case, I need to help people who get lost on manic rabbit trails, because I've gotten so far down that to the point that it was a quarter-life crisis. So for me, like, when I'm learning, I'm like, I have to find something for this person. I love these people. I have to help them. I need to find something for them. Then the manic rabbit trails go somewhere. But if you have people in your life who say, hey, you're being manic, you're going down a rabbit trail, it's good to heed that and be like, okay, maybe this is a masturbatory intellectual adventure here. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not getting this for anyone, and maybe someone's calling my attention to that. Then they can help you calibrate your interests and passions so that they're more
balanced.
Yeah, they're more balanced with everything else that you are.
That's
because you're somebody
exactly.
who's called to love people in the way that Jesus demonstrated. And you're somebody who is going to go down obsessive, manic, intellectual rabbit hole.
That is
You'll
so.
always be both of those. So you have to do them.
That's so powerful. Like literally, I was literally thinking about that the other day, of the idea of, and because I mean, obviously, masturbation is a concept that a lot of people get triggered by. Like, oh, masturbation, that's just a physical thing. But no, you can mentally masturbate in the sense that you are constantly stimulating your brain as you would your physical body. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there is an aspect to that is unhealthy in me, that I am overly physically exerting myself to try to, or not physically, mentally exerting myself to try to discover this thing really quick. And I think it's a sprinting thing. And I've described myself.
So there's two things about masturbation that I want to call out there. Mm-hmm. One, there's a philosopher who said, call no man a philosopher who heals no one. So if you're searching for ideas, you have to find them so that you can help orient people to reality, to relieve them of suffering. Otherwise, you're not a philosopher. You're just somebody who gets off on ideas. Mm-hmm. The second thing I want to point out about masturbation is that you might make love with a partner for the process of making love, but you masturbate to come every time. People don't just like leisurely masturbate for a while. They just kind of, oh, there it is.
They're so seeking that dopamine rush.
They're seeking. It's the difference between being on a journey though and being on a mission. So masturbation is, I just want the ending. Mm-hmm. It's not about a process. It's about an ending.
Yep, exactly.
Making love
it's
is
addiction.
More righteous because it's about a process with another person. So when you're learning and you're like, I want to get to wisdom. Like, where is it? Wisdom. Come on, where are you? You're supposed to be right here. Then you're on a mission instead of a journey, instead of an adventure. And making love with wisdom is, God, I enjoy.
Well, philosophy is the love of wisdom.
Reading this book right now. Like, I'm loving the process of sitting here and reading this book. I'm not trying to get to the end of the book. It's just beautiful to sit here and explore the mind of this guy, Ken Wilber. This is so great. That's making love with wisdom.
Exactly.
Let me get to the end of the book, because by the end of it, I'll be wise enough to validate myself a little. And then that's masturbating with wisdom. You know what I mean?
And I feel very convicted about that for myself as well. I think that I need to work on that. I think that I need to. I'm going too fast, essentially, is what I'm doing, and that's the kind of the entire life lesson that I've had all my life, of that I'm sprinting, not dancing with God. You know what I mean? I'm sprinting too far ahead. Life is not a walk or a sprint; it is a dance with the metaphysical Creator.
We can cut all this off at the end, since we're just getting personal at this point.
Yeah.
But I can tell that there's an intellectual urge that you just need to get out of your system, because the resonance of your voice has become calmer gradually since you started. So you had to ramble for 3 hours. You're like, come on, somebody let me talk about this shit.
I'm addicted to intellect.
Yeah. So, but you have to get it out of your system. Like, it's something that must be expressed in you. Like the gospel, I don't know how you feel about the apocryphals, but the Gospel of Thomas says, if you bring out what is inside of you, it will save you. If you do not bring out what is inside of you, it will kill you.
For instance, vomiting.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why.
I just did that today.
You vomited?
Yes, I vomited. I'm detoxing from all of the physical chemicals of all of the nastiness that I've been eating. I've been eating nasty foods like pizza and all these different things that we don't think of as nasty, but they have lots of cancer-causing stuff in them.
Right.
And so I've been detoxing.
Like, bro, I'm natural. I can't do this.
Yeah, literally, my body is starting to become more aware of itself, and it's becoming more like before I was just blind to it, right? I was just numb. Yeah. And my body is like, oh yeah, just give me more. Oh, let's smoke some more weed, in a metaphorical way. And then my physical essentially is being overexerted when it indulges in those high dopamine foods and those high, extremely addictive foods like sugars and processed stuff and stuff like that. And that's all that hippie stuff that is true about the idea that we need to grow in that food area, and because the body is the foundation of the mind and the emotions and the soul. You know what I mean? I guess you could argue that the soul is the foundation of the body, which I don't know. I don't know what the order is.
You could probably look at it both ways.
Yeah, you could probably look at it all four ways. But essentially, yeah, that's what I'm trying to work on, is the healing from that. And I mean, you've pointed that out, and I actually have been thinking about that the last couple of days, about the idea that I'm addicted to intellect, and I didn't even understand that until now. Like, I literally didn't even understand that concept until today. I didn't understand that you could be addicted to intellect.
Right, because an addiction,
I understood it before, but I didn't realize and take action on it.
Right, because the point of the addiction is you repeatedly do something that harms you and only brings pleasure to you. So it's like, it's hard to see intellect harming you, but it's easy to see the difference between engaging in an intellectual endeavor for the service of others and engaging in an intellectual endeavor for only the service of self. That you can feel the difference between those two. But it's hard to think, like, well, am I going to cram so much knowledge into me that it hurts me? Like, is knowledge dangerous? Like, well, if it's not balanced with the other things, yeah.
Yeah.
In itself, it's not.
Yeah. Final conclusion is the poem. And this is going to go over the spirit and the body. Previously, at the beginning, I had gone over the emotion and the emotion and the body. And then now I'm going to go over the emotion, not the emotion, spirit and the intellect, not the body.
Got it. Yep.
So here's the next poem. This one is logic. This one's the mind. This is the one that I probably have the most development on, and it's probably why it's the most complicated one.
Cool.
Let's see. This one is called, let's see, why am I blanking? Okay. Allegory of our cave. So you've probably heard of the allegory of the cave in
I don't know
philosophy.
it, but I've heard the name, yeah.
It's a Platonic thing, not in the sense of it's Platonic in the sense of friendship, but in the sense of Plato created it.
Yeah.
So he basically created this story, and I mean, I would argue that he didn't create it, that God worked through him, and God created it through him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. But essentially, it's the allegory of the cave. It's a philosophy of our mind and how it shackles us. So, The Allegory of Our Cave by Brennen, Hrebeniuk. Black and white are not the only colors that I see. You think I'm at skin color? There's more than that to be. The chromatic establishment of light has more to plea. The color of your spirit has more color than the sea. Beige, red, orange, yellow, just a couple options. Purple, blue, green, turquoise, collectively adopted. The colors on the spectrum are more than just appearances. They make up all reality, holistic, not empiricist. If you live inside a cave, you'll see shadows of reality. Mirages, no deceptions, man-made visions of morality. Your vision is so blind, you think eyes see nothing but normalities, but your vision is just that, just one piece of totality. You feel a being tackle you, the being unshackles you. You get thrusted through the universe, Doctor Strange kind of attitude. You snap back to reality to discover you were dreaming, but the dreams were more real than anything you were feeling. You look up to see the ceiling, but this is the first time. You never moved your head, you were shackled by your mind. To get up from where you're sitting, to find vomit you are spitting. Your reality is spinning, but you feel you're finally winning. You look over to the other guys just sitting there, glazed donut eyes. You leave the cave to start your life, but contemplate what is life. You see what you have missed out. You see what you've been missing out. Reality, it has a spout. It's prism water flowing out on top of humans' heads of sprout. Your eyes, they fill with lots of tears, beauty lost for all these years, mainly due to toxic fears of growing up to racketeer. Your head back home emotional, to tell the folks what's notable. They laugh, they jeer, unapproachable. They call you liar, unsociable. The pressure builds all through your glands. You can't believe they can't understand. You get angry and blame the man, but then he shows you a greater plan. You notice something in the cave you never saw before you're saved. Demons, monsters, and a wraith, unsuitable for peaceful place. You tell them go, but they say no. Y'all let me in, to forever slow. Your progress, it's mine I'll stow, to take you down before I croak. I'll never let you take the ropes. I tell him, look, man, I'm so cold. We need some heat up in the stove. I pull the curtain to let him know. Let the light in and watch him go. All the monsters shriek and scream. Their bodies seem to go so weak. I put the chains on them they see, before that they had shackled me. I go to wake up all the guys, then realize they're we and I. I shrouded mask a real disguise. My soul had left to fix their lives. We all wake up with open eyes, filled with joy and not with guise. Our hearts are open and so are minds, our spirits lifted to the heavens and skies.
That was dope. I really liked that one.
Thank you.
I needed a beat.
I know. That's my favorite one, to be honest. But it's also my intellect, which is governed by my ego. So that was like my favorite part of the whole all of the poems. But
Nice.
I also
Yeah, I
feel
really liked
that there is a piece of God that spoke through me in this. Like, I don't feel like I should take credit for any of this, to be honest. I don't feel like
Nice.
any of these poems I should take credit for. I didn't feel as though they were mine. It felt like it felt like God was whispering into my mind, essentially, with a very peaceful tone. It wasn't
Divinely
anything.
inspired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't negative. It was purely like a father speaks, in a good father, not a toxic father, but a good father
Awesome.
that speaks love into their child. And so it felt like that when with all these poems. I wrote these over the course of 2 days. I wrote two of these
Wow.
poems, 2 days, and it all connected on the third day,
Nice.
which is interesting.
Very cool.
And there's also numbers that go into those poems. If you read the word counts, they all align with the energy that they put out. So if you actually calculate the numbers,
Interesting.
which I can go over later on a separate note. So then we go into the final poem. This one is the spirit or the soul, which that's literally the aspect that's the final piece of the puzzle, right? I believe. So then we go into the soul. This one's called Newborn. I call this one Newborn. The soul. This is a very metaphysical poem.
Okay.
But also realistic and okay. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Newborn by Brennen, Hrebeniuk. We start this life a baby, just an infant child. A baby needs the parents. They begin life undefiled. The parents love the baby loves the parents. The baby loves them more and more, the more they give assurance. The baby gets rebellious. The toddler years ensue. The parents get frustrated but realize it will choo-choo. The toddler turns to child. The rules begin to file. The child does as he is told, for if not, he fears denial. The child turns to teen and then a grown adult. He relives the experiences and realized he needs to grow. He looks at his sculpted body and wonders if there's more. He sees his wealth created in the luxuries of more. The material becomes meaningless as he starts to contemplate. Is love the greatest antidote, or is existence simply fate? He detaches from society, but only for a short time. He forms inventions, thoughts, and medicine, and gives away full time. The people don't appreciate the things he does for them. He gets very cynical. Ask why can't they understand? A voice from heaven raises, or maybe it's the universe. A hand comes out with unity and gives him a shepherd's purse. He realizes everything that's meaningful in life is giving love and understanding to all that suffer through the strife.
Nice.
That describes like moving through all of the levels, huh?
All of them did.
Cool.
Well, except for maybe the intellect one. But the intellect one is technically still moving through the ego development. Because it's more complicated though. If you actually you can actually mark the different levels. But the body one definitely did. You saw how it switched from I to we. It switching. Do you want me to repeat those ones?
Sure.
So then you can have a new perspective on them after all that you have learned or understood. Okay. This is basically an example of me becoming better at connecting the dots of my logic, essentially. So it's like me to explain things in a way that is more coherent than just skipping from point A to Z.
For sure.
And this is good. So I'm going to start with the body one, the world. We want to be, again, the body is also associated with the ego. I mean, I think all of them are associated with the ego, but the identity of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We Want to Be by Brennen, Hrebeniuk. I want to be a monkey. I want to be a bear. I want to be a lion. I want to be a hare. I want to be a daddy. I want to be a mom. I want to be a Christian. I want to be a nun. I want to be a rock star. I want to feel I've won. I want to be a boxer. I want to throw a punch. I want to be policeman. I want to guard with gun. I want to fight a fire. I want to fight water fun. I want to be successful. I want to do the run. I want to craft. I want to make. We want to become. We want to give. We want to live. We want to love. We want what's whole. We want what's good. We want all that's above. We want the peace. We want unity. We want the Father's love. We unify existence, for existence is simply love.
So that also describes moving to the
That's how it was intended.
until you arrive at unity and love.
Exactly.
Nice.
And they all make up. And what's interesting is that they're all holistic in the way that they encompass what I understand to be reality, and then they all play off of each other too, because they play into the different aspects of reality. So it's a ultimate whole, essentially. Not in the sense that I wrote it. I think that God wrote it as a message, essentially, to be able to allow anybody who was willing to listen to basically be able to grow. Not in the sense that I'm the one that made them grow, but in the sense that God spoke through me, and other people are able to grow as well. I don't take responsibility for anything that I have done, probably even here today, or any of the poems, because it doesn't feel like I'm the one necessarily speaking all of it. And that can sound scary to some people, because people are like, oh, are you possessed? I'm like, no, I don't think I'm possessed. I'm not possessed. I'm fully aware of my being here. But essentially, I feel like God is essentially on my shoulders, like literally, like he's holding me. He's speaking into my ear and allowing me to speak out, essentially. Mm-hmm. That might sound crazy. That might sound stupid. That might sound a bunch of different things, and I don't want it to do.
But it's sort of
like
consensual, which
yeah.
like it differentiates
it's a consensual
it a lot from possession.
Yeah, exactly. It's a consensual. I'm literally asking him to help me.
Yeah.
To be my father, to be my good father, and to come alongside me and help me through life.
Yeah.
He's the good shepherd. I'm the sheep. A lot of the times I make fun of the sheep, but I'm one.
Sure.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, let's repeat the other one. The what is it called?
Be the emotion one.
Emotion one. So, what is it? What's the emotion one called? What's the emotion one called? It was called, I'm getting so entrenched in multiple different things that it's hard to recall, because all of these things are moving forward and it's hard to move backwards, which is probably not good. But I need to go into the emotional side of me and find this.
Would it be on an earlier slide?
Yes. Well, it's the picture, which will then allow me to see it, because pictures often bring me insight.
It was the one with the spiral picture on it.
Yes, it's called. I know what it's called. It's called Unitive God, or Unifying God. This one's the one that relates to the emotions, I believe.
Cool.
And it's also calculated in the numbers that it's the emotional one. Mm-hmm. So Unifying God by Brennen, Hrebeniuk. You brought me into being. You sewed my arms and legs, and with the seed you sowed, your creation I was made. Laying on my belly, my body starts to shake. I move my arms and legs, they're like jelly, they don't break. You prop me up on my feet as I learn to take a step. You fill me with your power, and the path is made you set. I learn to love my family, for it's they that loved me. But a father's love is greater when it's the greatest entity. I perceive all of your wonder, the way I think will be. I imagine all the greatness and the friendships that I seek. I then get real rebellious, I say no, and then I pout. I push over my brother and blame him for the spout. I start to get real selfish, consuming more and more. And then I realize the truth. Community is the next door. I get real high and mighty. I follow lots of rules. I'm told I'm good by everyone and that I am so cool. I do what I am told and the rules always uphold. I continue judging everyone for not fitting the mold. I start to see absurdity in the rules that do unfold. I start to question people and the norms that they are scold. I form a new identity, much stronger than the first. I pick up all my tools and start digging into earth. What once was seen as profit becomes so meaningless. The money I accrued, what need I have for this? I give it all away, hoping for happiness someday, but the money keeps on coming back in some backwards kind of way. I turn my eyes to heaven, what more is to be done? The Lord says you aren't done yet. It's the people, they need one. I begin to start the projects to help all those in need. I invent structures and understandings to help people succeed. The people, they reject me. Why can't they understand? The Lord says you're not done yet, for you are just one man. He says, son, you need to unify. Get out of just one place. Seek understanding. Surround the world with empathy and grace. The people don't want solutions, they just want to believe. But building a world of unity is all they really need. Be with them, learn with them, be all they need to be. It is then that we will unify and you will come to me.
Nice.
They're all about moving through the levels to God, unity, love, huh?
100%.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. And you can literally see every single level definitively. The only one that's harder to see for me is probably the logic one, the allegory of the cave. It's a lot more complex, which probably describes my intellect as being higher than the other stages. Mm-hmm. I think that each of those kind of describes my levels of how I feel in each stage, in each part of my life, my spirit, my body, and stuff like that. So my body is very childish, as you saw. Mm-hmm. It's very childish, which is interesting. It's very focused on the choo-choo trains and the policemen and becoming and having a gun to defend people and basically having all these things which are honorable and they're higher level ideas, but a lot of it is very from my inner child of physicality, of essentially like my little kid that just wants to grow up with love, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything else you wanted to share about the book?
God loves you. That's literally it.
Amen.
He wants everybody to be unified, regardless of if you love him back. Literally, he's not concerned with whether you love him back. He loves you, and all that is bad is not his fault. It is not his fault necessarily. For you are a human. You miss the mark all the time.
Sure.
And don't blame the big man for your things. For if you trace back all of the aspects of your life, you'd see where you messed up. Essentially, you would be able to see that, oh, it's actually not those people that messed me up. It's not those. It's not myself that messed me up. It's both. It's everything. It's all sin nature. It's all the darkness of the world that encloses upon me, that is natural. Not that darkness is bad to experience, because you have to go through darkness to see the light.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Then night school.
Night school.